An unseen commander expressed sheer surprise at the approaching threat. The commander mocked the famous elk kinesis, doubting the lone warrior could ever defeat such a massive army. Ordering the archers to fire, the army confidently expected elk to die in an absolute instant. A massive volley of deadly arrows rained down upon the solitary warrior. Without flinching, elk initiated a sudden defensive maneuver as the arrows closed in. An invisible barrier instantly shattered the incoming projectiles, completely nullifying the army's devastating volley. Elk smoothly raised his hand, channeling a terrifying unseen energy. Panicking as the front line collapsed, the enemy commander desperately ordered all remaining units to attack. The ground violently trembled, leaving the soldiers confused as they mistook the supernatural tremor for an earthquake. A soldier screamed in pure terror, urging his comrades to look at the unimaginable horror looming behind them. Staring in absolute disbelief, the army realized an entire mountain was floating in the sky. The colossal mountain plummeted toward the earth, casting a massive shadow of doom over the helpless soldiers. Awestruck observers realized the sheer, impossible magnitude of Elk's devastating power. Ironically, this world-shattering feat was executed using telekinesis, a power universally branded as the weakest skill in history. Flashing back, the narrative revealed that children in this world receive a divine blessing at age 10 that traditionally supports society. As time passed, the arbitrary skills bestowed by the gods came to rigidly dictate every person's profession and social standing. A young elk strained fiercely, pouring all his energy into activating his newly acquired ability. Sweat poured down his face as he pushed his limits in absolute silence, desperate to produce a meaningful result. Exhausted, Elk cursed his seemingly useless telekinesis, while his loyal maid Emma cheerfully celebrated him moving an object just 1 centimeter. Panting heavily, Elk felt utterly defeated, knowing his lack of practical power ruined his worth in a skill-obsessed world. He stared down in shame, agonizing over how pathetic he was for the firstborn son of a prestigious duke. Urging him to lift his head, Emma gently reminded Elk of the sacred promise he had made to his late mother, Rose. She echoed his mother's profound words, vowing that they would always do their absolute best regardless of the skills they received. Touched by Emma's fierce loyalty, Elk listened as she promised that both she and his mother would always be on his side. The touching moment shattered when Elk's arrogant siblings, Rashuo and Sarisa, arrived to cruelly mock his uselessness and insult his maid. Furious at their disrespect, Elk bravely stood up to his privileged brother and sister, demanding they stop insulting Emma. Rashuo sneered and instantly drew his weapon, casually dismissing Elk's defensive outburst. Flaunting his elite swordmaster skill, Rashuo arrogantly warned his powerless older brother to back down. Rashuo viciously threatened to harm Emma if Elk dared to make a single move against them. Bored by the confrontation, Sarisa coldly reminded Rashuo that they were going to be late for their elite combat practice. Sarisa ruthlessly rubbed their superiority in Elk's face, boasting about their prestigious teachers while leaving him behind. Pausing briefly, Rashuo delivered the ominous news that their father requested a meeting with all the siblings that night. With a final mocking sneer, Rashuo bid his older brother farewell, leaving Elk and Emma alone in the courtyard. Elk silently reflected on his tragic fate, realizing he had always been an outcast in the Duke's family long before his weak skill manifested. He bitterly acknowledged that his politically driven father never loved his mother, leaving her as the only person who had ever truly cared for him. Ignoring his minor injuries, Elk apologized to Emma as she worriedly offered to fetch the first aid kit. Elk agonizingly wished his divine blessing had been powerful enough to win his cold father's approval and earn him a real place in the family. Refusing to surrender to his despair, Elk gritted his teeth and aggressively resumed his telekinesis training. Exhausted but determined, he pushed his limits until Emma excitedly cheered that he had successfully moved an apple. The small fruit shifted slightly, marking a tiny but monumental victory for the resilient young outcast. Approaching the heavy doors, Elk nervously knocked and asked for permission to enter his father's study. His father wasted no time, coldly declaring that Elk was officially removed from the list of candidates for the next duke. Shocked, Elk argued that tradition demanded the firstborn inherit, but his father sternly countered that this only applied to those with a worthy skill. Mocking telekinesis as completely worthless, his father sneered, leaving Elk groaning in humiliated frustration. Showing a fleeting moment of pity for his late wife Rose, the father decided to give his useless son one final chance. He proposed a high-stakes duel against Rashuo, promising to recognize Elk as heir if he won, but demanding he forfeit the title completely if he lost. Stepping forward with a wicked grin, Rashuo warned his brother that he had no intention of just handing over the position. Unsheathing his weapon, Rashuo formally challenged his older brother to a decisive duel. Sarisa sadistically asked if Elk was planning to run away, while their father casually offered him an easy out if he was too scared to fight. Elk hesitated in heavy silence as his father demanded an answer and commanded the siblings to stop their relentless taunting. Flashing a sinister smile, Sarisa sarcastically promised that they would all be cheering for him. After a moment of intense internal debate, Elk clenched his fists and steeled his trembling resolve. Glaring directly at his tormentors, Elk confidently yelled out his acceptance of the brutal duel. Handing out wooden practice swords, the father established the absolute rule that the first to declare defeat would lose the match. Gripping his practice blade tightly, Elk reasoned that despite having the swordmaster skill, Rashuo might still be unaccustomed to wielding it. Refusing to surrender to despair, Elk boldly convinced himself that there was still a fighting chance. The two brothers faced off in the courtyard, locked in a tense and deadly standoff. Raising his hand, the father officially commenced the duel, signaling the explosive start of the violent confrontation. Rashuo instantly blitzed forward with terrifying speed, launching a devastating downward strike with his wooden blade. The sheer impact effortlessly knocked Elk's weapon away, prompting Rashuo to mockingly ask if he was already surrendering. Gritting his teeth in furious frustration, Elk scrambled desperately to recover his lost footing. Before Elk could react, a sudden and invisible magical force violently slammed into him. The crushing impact launched Elk backward through the air like a broken ragdoll. Struggling to move his impossibly heavy body, Elk correctly deduced that Sarisa was secretly using her magic to sabotage him. Trying to call out their blatant cheating, Elk suddenly found his voice choked off as another wave of agony hit him. Collapsing to his knees with a pained groan, Elk glared helplessly as Rashuo offered a sickeningly fake apology. Elk stared in sheer terror as his younger brother casually raised his weapon for a lethal strike. Promising a merciful death, Rashuo infused his practice sword with a razor-sharp energy that transformed it into a deadly blade. Desperate and bleeding, Elk frantically wondered what extreme atrocity his brother was actually planning to commit. Paralyzed on the ground, Elk desperately looked around, wondering why his father was allowing this execution to happen. A chilling realization washed over the young outcast as he finally understood they had planned to murder him from the very beginning. A horrific splash of blood erupted across the scene as Rashuo ruthlessly delivered the fatal strike. Waking up in a mysterious glowing void, a deeply disoriented Elk wondered exactly where he had been transported. Inspecting his chest in utter shock, Elk realized that his fatal slash wound had completely vanished. Gazing around the ethereal landscape, Elk solemnly assumed he had died and arrived in a picturesque heaven. Sighing heavily, he tearfully accepted his tragic fate, lamenting that he never cared about being heir and only wanted to belong to the family. Pushing past his sorrow to apologize to his late mother and Emma, Elk was interrupted by a mysterious voice teasingly asking if the maid was his girlfriend. Snapping his head up in utter confusion, Elk frantically searched the empty void for the source of the playful voice. Startled out of his wits, Elk screamed as he suddenly spotted a winged person casually floating right above him. Clearing her throat politely, the mysterious angelic figure prepared to properly introduce herself to the bewildered boy. The mysterious winged girl proudly introduced herself as the goddess Pipina, striking a cute pose while assuming Elk already knew her legendary name. Recovering from his initial shock, Elk hesitantly confirmed that he had indeed heard of her. Staring at her floating form, Elk silently noted that this eccentric girl looked absolutely nothing like the majestic creator depicted in picture books and sculptures. He found himself overwhelmed by her boundless, almost chaotic energy. Pipina casually explained that Elk was incredibly lucky to have wandered into the realm between life and death after nearly dying. Flashing a peace sign, the goddess declared that since such a rare event only happens once every few millennia, she had to personally make an appearance. Acknowledging his mesmerized state, she playfully announced that the truly important part of his lucky break was about to begin. Striking a dramatic, magical pose, Pipina ordered him to prepare to be absolutely amazed. Glowing with divine power, she offered to grant him any super rare skill he desired before sending him back to the living world. Mistaking his stunned silence for overwhelming joy, Pipina proudly awaited his breathless gratitude for the promised skill. As she happily suggested he praise her overwhelming kindness and beauty, Elk bluntly interrupted to reject the divine offer. Assuming her hearing was failing, Pip Ina awkwardly leaned in and asked him to repeat himself. When Elk firmly reiterated that he didn't need a pointless new skill, Pip Ina angrily chopped him on the head in pure disbelief. Rubbing his bruised head, Elk listened as she frantically argued that any other kid would be thrilled to receive a custom rare skill. Trying to hype him up, she revealed that legendary heroes and ancient kings had all received their famous mythic skills right here in this realm. Pressing her face uncomfortably close, the energetic goddess begged him to ask for something, complaining that she was bored and full of unused energy. Changing her tactic, Pip Ina slyly asked if he wanted to show off a powerful new version of himself to the girl named Emma. Pointing to a glowing, magical screen, the goddess gently noted that Emma was deeply worried about him. An ethereal window materialized, revealing a heart-wrenching vision of Emma crying over Elk's bloodied, unconscious body in the real world. Seeing his devoted friend in such agonizing pain, Elk desperately cried out her name. Pip Ina gently explained that his physical body was safely resting at Emma's house as she faithfully waited for him to wake up. Anticipating his change of heart, Pip Ina smugly offered the rare skill again to make Emma happy, but Elk stubbornly refused because he couldn't betray his promise to his mother. Clenching his fists with burning resolve, Elk declared he wanted to protect Emma by becoming stronger using only his own innate telekinesis. Stunned by this unprecedented lost soul, Pip Ina listened in shock as Elk fell to his knees and begged the goddess to personally train him. Intrigued by the entertaining prospect, Pip Ina cheerfully agreed to grant his unique wish, instantly filling Elk with overwhelming gratitude. Matching his fiery spirit, Pip Ina warned him that mastering telekinesis would require a massive amount of time, a condition Elk boldly accepted. Staring warmly at the magical projection, Elk silently apologized for making Emma cry and promised he would return to her soon. Completely confident that a god's training would eventually fix his pathetic skill, Elk swore he would endure however many years it took. Interrupting his sentimental monologue, Pip Ina enthusiastically promised to finish his brutal training in record time. Elk screamed in absolute terror as a massive sign revealed her grueling boot camp would take a staggering 2,000 years. Refusing to back down despite the absurd time frame, Elk loudly swore on his mother's grave that he would become a proper, strong man without relying on cheat skills. Screaming with absolute determination, Elk entrusted himself to the laughing goddess for the next 2 millennia to ensure he could protect Emma and himself. Elk screamed in absolute shock at the daunting prospect of training for 2,000 years. Panicking, Elk realized that if he trained in this realm for that long, his physical body in the real world would grow old and die. Waving off his worries, Pip Ina playfully explained that her divine realm followed a completely different flow of time. The goddess clarified that a staggering 2 millennia in her realm equated to a mere 6 years in the real world. Relieved by the time difference, Elk accepted the training period but nervously brought up another major concern. Answering his fears about his abandoned body rotting, Pip Ina assured him that his physical form would stay alive and continue to grow as long as his soul remained here. Comforted by this divine assurance, Elk acknowledged that this was the safest way, especially knowing his lovely maid Emma was taking care of him. Leaning in with a teasing grin, Pip Ina asked if the overwhelming reality of the situation had finally scared him. She casually suggested he could just take a rare skill and leave immediately, but Elk aggressively shut the idea down with a deafening shout. Elk fiercely vowed that acquiring a cheat skill was meaningless if he could not return as a proper man, swearing on his mother's grave to stick to his decision. Laughing hysterically at his intense fiery resolve, Pip Ina joyfully officially kicked off his 2,000-year training regimen. Getting right to work, the goddess explained that the fundamentals of telekinesis strictly depended on the user's innate ability to move objects with their mind. Pointing toward the horizon, Pip Ina casually highlighted a massive, towering boulder as their first target. With a simple gesture, she effortlessly lifted the colossal rock into the sky, leaving Elk completely dumbfounded. Overwhelmed by the absurd demonstration, a sweating Elk desperately begged her to teach him one manageable step at a time. Pip Ina forced him to study a massive stack of thick, complex books detailing the intricate mechanics of using internal power. Elk sat cross-legged in deep meditation, intensely focusing his mental energy as he attempted to grasp the fundamental concepts. Gasping for air, Elk lay completely exhausted on the ground, his body pushed to its absolute breaking point. Disappointed by his pitiful physical stamina, Pip Ina ominously announced that she had prepared a special guest to help build his endurance. A towering horde of grotesque demons materialized before the terrified boy, introduced cheerfully by the goddess as a merry bunch. Warning him that he would be eaten if he did not act fast, Pip-Ina ruthlessly ordered Elk to survive using his wits and newfound strength. Elk frantically sprinted for his life, desperately dodging the massive, terrifying beasts as they viciously pursued him. Cornered by a massive monster, Elk channeled his power and successfully deflected its heavy, crushing strike. He continued his brutal combat training, relentlessly fighting off the demonic horde to hone his physical and telekinetic prowess. Standing triumphantly over the defeated monsters, Elk finally earned sincere praise from the impressed goddess. As time rapidly passed, the grueling, intense training regimen continued to forge the young outcast into a formidable warrior. Pip-Ina warmly commended Elk for mastering high-level techniques without chanting, noting that he would easily pass any official test now. Watching him calmly levitate massive boulders, the proud goddess marveled at how much the boy who once struggled to move a pebble had grown. Relaxing together after a session, Pip-Ina casually tried to recall the name of Elk's treacherous younger brother. Elk calmly supplied Rashuo's name, his face hardened by centuries of relentless discipline. Acknowledging that Rashuo held the Sword Saint skill and Sarisa the Magic Saint skill, Pip-Ina confidently declared them to be easy opponents. Boasting about her personal training, the goddess smugly assured Elk that his victory was now an absolute certainty. A brutal flashback flashed through Elk's mind, showing Rashuo's merciless betrayal and his own bloody defeat. Staring forward with cold, unwavering resolve, Elk definitively agreed that he would crush his brother. Thrilled by his intense confidence, Pip-Ina happily challenged him to yet another sparring round. Rejecting her offer, Elk firmly stated he was going back, prompting the goddess to playfully beg him to stay for another 1,000 years. Noticing her sudden clinginess, Elk teased Pip-Ina about being lonely, which she frantically and stubbornly denied. The goddess silently gazed at her remarkable student, hiding her genuine sadness behind a soft, melancholic expression. Smiling warmly, she sincerely thanked Elk, admitting she enjoyed their time together far more than she ever expected. Moved by her rare display of genuine affection, Elk paused, preparing to say his final heartfelt goodbye. Elk bluntly tells Pip-Ina the rigorous training wasn't fun at all, prompting the goddess to playfully tease him about his brutal honesty ruining his popularity. Pip-Ina reminds Elk of his beloved Emma and warns him that returning will hurt a bit, as all his newly acquired experiences will carry over to his physical body. Elk winces in anticipation as he firmly acknowledges her ominous warning. Glowing with divine light, Pip-Ina proudly assures him that with his current power, the gods guarantee he won't lose to anyone. Giving a cheerful peace sign, the energetic goddess bids her legendary student a final, affectionate farewell. As he begins to violently fade away, Elk calls out Pip-Ina's name one last time. A bright, ethereal light fully engulfs Elk's form as his soul transports across the dimensional boundary back to the living world. Groaning in sheer pain, Elk offers a sincere, final word of thanks to the eccentric goddess who completely changed his destiny. Waking up in a strange bed, a heavily disoriented 16-year-old Elk rubs his sore head and wonders if he truly made it back. A stunned voice weakly stammers his name as an older Emma drops to her knees in absolute disbelief. Bursting into heavy tears of overwhelming joy, Emma leaps forward to desperately embrace her newly awakened master. Gently calming the sobbing maid, Elk softly asks her to explain everything that has happened during his long slumber. Emma solemnly reveals that 6 years ago, the Kinesis family abruptly dismissed her and cold-heartedly ordered her to dispose of Elk's seemingly lifeless body. Refusing to bury him, she secretly took him with her after discovering his cold body mysteriously refused to decay. Tears welling in her eyes, Emma confesses she faithfully waited all these years because she always believed he would eventually wake up. Deeply moved by her unwavering loyalty, Elk gazes softly at the incredible woman who single-handedly saved his life. Bowing his head in profound gratitude, Elk sincerely thanks a flustered Emma for keeping him alive all this time. Flashing a warm smile, he gently reminds her that since he is no longer a noble, there is absolutely no need for such formal titles. He warmly asks her to stop calling him Sama and just treat him as an equal going forward. The tender moment instantly shatters when terrified villagers scream that a savage horde of orcs is brutally attacking the settlement. Annoyed by the violent interruption, Elk calmly orders Emma to stay hidden indoors while noting the monsters are closing in fast. Before a highly confused Emma can process his reckless command, Elk swiftly moves straight toward the imminent danger. Emma screams his name in sheer terror as the unarmed teenager steps right into the chaotic battlefield. Ignoring the surrounding chaos, Elk intensely focuses his newly forged power on the shattered remains of the ruined village. With a simple, quiet command, a massive storm of heavy debris effortlessly levitates into the sky. The panicked village guards spot the floating rubble and mistakenly assume the enemy monsters have called in magical reinforcements. Channeling his immense telekinetic will, Elk precisely targets the roaring horde of monstrous orcs charging toward him. He effortlessly launches the jagged debris downward like a rapid barrage of deadly missiles. Smirking coldly, Elk ensures every single heavy projectile lands a devastating direct hit on the monster's vital spots. A massive, violent dust cloud erupts across the battlefield as the telekinetic barrage completely annihilates the invading beasts. The sheer kinetic force of the impact mercilessly crushes the remaining orcs deep into the dirt. Glaring at the decimated horde, Elk irritably scolds the monsters for acting like a nuisance and destroying people's precious homes. The awestruck villagers stare in absolute silence at the unimaginable destruction unleashed by a single, mysterious boy. A stunned guard stammers in pure disbelief, asking his bewildered comrade if he just saw what happened. The guards marvel at how an unknown teenager managed to obliterate an entire orc army in one effortless strike. Landing softly on the ground, Elk smirks and quietly thanks the gods, highly pleased that his enhanced telekinesis works perfectly. Standing over a twitching, dying orc, Elk coldly declares that being crushed by the very houses they destroyed is simply karma. A frantic Emma suddenly sprints out onto the dangerous battlefield, screaming Elk's name in pure panic. Elk immediately drops his cool demeanor to scold her for running outside barefoot when he explicitly told her to stay hidden. Before Emma can tearfully demand to know what he just did, a commanding voice suddenly shouts at Elk from behind. The village guard captain approaches Elk, expressing his deep gratitude to the boy for single-handedly defeating the orcs. Waving off the captain's overwhelming thanks, Elk humbly insists he was just doing what naturally had to be done. Overflowing with energy from his long slumber, Elk generously volunteers to clean up the massive debris so the guards can prioritize the injured. Emma nervously interjects, doubting Elk could possibly handle such an impossible task alone, but he stubbornly declares his wish to restore her hometown immediately. Confident in his newly awakened power, Elk assures them that using his telekinesis will be far faster than an entire cleanup crew. Raising his hand, Elk instantly focuses his immense psychic energy on the ruined battlefield. Dozens of heavy wooden planks and broken stones effortlessly levitate into the sky under his precise control. The massive storm of debris smoothly flies through the air, perfectly guided by Elk's unwavering mental command. Surveying the newly cleared ground, Elk happily notes that the majority of the village's rubble has been successfully cleaned up. Turning his attention to the grotesque aftermath, Elk wonders aloud what they should do with the massive pile of dead orcs. A cheerful group of village children suddenly runs up, excitedly greeting the big brother who valiantly protected their home. Surprised by the children's eagerness to eat the orc meat, the former noble realizes he had never actually tried it before. Taking charge of the situation, Elk orders the children to call their parents so he can butcher the meat for a massive village feast. Later that evening, a massive bonfire lights up the village as the locals joyfully celebrate their survival. Spotting Emma through the lively crowd, Elk gently approaches his loyal maid. Handing her a freshly cooked skewer of meat, Elk warmly offers Emma a portion of the hard-earned feast. As Emma respectfully addresses him with her usual formality, Elk suddenly raises his hand to stop her. Staring intently at her, he firmly reminds Emma that she is no longer allowed to call him by a noble title. Flustered by his sudden strictness, Emma awkwardly attempts to call him by just his name, prompting him to warn her that her food is getting cold. Elk smiles warmly and decides they will work on completely dropping the formal honorifics later, accepting her current attempt for now. Taking a bite of the roasted monster meat, Elk is completely taken aback by its incredible flavor. Chuckling at his surprised reaction, Emma happily notes that he has already seamlessly assimilated into the rural village. Emma warmly shares that the grateful villagers have fully accepted him, celebrating the arrival of such a powerful skill user. Overwhelmed by the genuine acceptance, Elk silently rejoices that his 2,000 years of grueling effort finally paid off. Blushing deeply, Emma nervously asks Elk if he would be willing to live with her in this village. Elk freezes in absolute shock, completely flustered by her unexpectedly bold proposal. Panicking as her face turns bright red, Emma frantically tries to rephrase her overly straightforward invitation. Calming down, she tearfully confesses that watching over his motionless body for 6 years awakened a deep, unexplainable feeling within her. Trembling with lingering trauma, Emma admits she is still terrified that something horrific could happen to him again. Looking desperately into his eyes, she pleads with him not to go somewhere far away, fearing she couldn't bear the heartbreak. Touched by her profound devotion, Elk gently apologizes, explaining that he still has one crucial task left to complete. Startled by his solemn tone, Emma confusedly asks what he could possibly need to do. Fearing the worst, Emma anxiously asks if the officially disowned boy is planning to return to the treacherous Kinesis family. Elk's expression darkens as he instantly shoots down her fearful assumption. Staring into the flames, Elk coldly declares that he has absolutely no intention of ever returning as a noble. With his eyes burning with intense fury, Elk reveals his dark intent to seek violent revenge against his murderous family. Flashing forward, a terrified Rashuo screams his sister's name as he violently crashes to the ground. Bleeding and desperate, Rashuo curses his attacker, realizing he is completely outmatched. Panic sets in as Rashuo frantically demands to know what monstrous skill has effortlessly dismantled him. Standing victorious over his treacherous brother, Elk chillingly reveals the name of his supreme power as telekinesis. Emma stares in absolute shock, stammering as she tries to process the sudden mention of revenge. Laughing gently to ease her visible tension, Elk tells Emma to just think of his goal as setting things straight. He calmly explains that moving forward requires him to deal with the heavy burden in his heart, prompting him to offer a new proposal. Flashing a warm smile, Elk casually suggests that since they are both 16, they should enroll in school together. Emma gasps in sheer disbelief at the completely unexpected suggestion. Elk notes that the prestigious Gallatin Royal Academy is the perfect destination, as his treacherous siblings are practically guaranteed to enroll there. He points out that the academy offers a fair battleground to settle their rivalry, while simultaneously giving them a chance to make friends and see the world. Overwhelmed by her low social status, Emma nervously stammers that a mere commoner like her has no right to attend such an elite institution. Waving off her frantic concerns, Elk confidently assures her that anyone can easily enroll as long as they can pay the tuition. He casually produces a massive platinum coin, leaving Emma utterly speechless at the sight of currency worth 1,000 gold pieces. Elk cheerfully reveals the coin is a divine farewell gift from goddess Pipina, ensuring they have more than enough funds for their journey. Swiftly completing their necessary enrollment procedures, the determined duo prepares to leave their quiet rural life behind. Before finally departing, Emma bids an emotional and deeply grateful farewell to her loving parents. A massive crowd of villagers gathers to cheerfully send off their powerful protector and his loyal companion. The majestic capital city of the Gallatin Kingdom proudly towers before them as they arrive to begin their grand new chapter. Noticing her awestruck and overwhelmed expression, Elk gently asks Emma if the bustling environment makes her nervous. Emma timidly admits it is her very first time seeing such a grand city, which Elk warmly dismisses as a completely normal reaction. Looking around the massive campus, Elk hums quietly as he tries to figure out exactly where the entrance ceremony is being held. He continues scanning the unfamiliar grounds, scratching his head in slight confusion as he searches for the main venue. Suddenly, an unfamiliar young man approaches them, curiously asking if they happen to be new students. Elk turns to face the stranger, maintaining a cautious demeanor as he confirms their status. Smiling brightly, the boy enthusiastically reveals that he and his sister were just heading to the exact same ceremony. Chuckling awkwardly, he quickly apologizes, realizing his sudden approach might have made him sound a bit suspicious. He politely introduces himself as Nick, a merchant's son from the Senegal Trading Company, while introducing his quiet sister Mary. Dropping his guard, Elk warmly introduces himself and Emma to their friendly new peers. Nick cheerfully suggests they all head to the entrance ceremony together, an offer that Elk readily and gladly accepts. As they walk through the sprawling campus, Nick casually asks Elk which specific track he will be joining. Seeing Elk's minor confusion, Nick clarifies that he is asking whether they chose to focus on combat or commerce. He explains that aspiring knights, adventurers, and warriors traditionally enter the physically demanding skill department. Meanwhile, those who wish to apply their abilities toward trades or professions logically enroll in the commerce department. Nodding in complete understanding, Elk confirms that he will join the skill department while Emma enters the commerce department. Thrilled by the coincidence, Nick notes that Elk will be in the exact same department as Mary before curiously asking about his combat skill. Without a single hint of shame, Elk flatly states that his inherent skill is telekinesis. Nick and Mary freeze in absolute shock, stammering in sheer disbelief at the incredibly weak-sounding ability. Snapping out of her daze, Mary fiercely scolds her brother for rudely prying into a stranger's personal skill details. As Nick awkwardly hurries them toward the ceremony, Elk silently reflects on how general society still considers telekinesis to be completely useless. The grand entrance ceremony officially kicks off, building anticipation for the prestigious new student representative speeches. A booming announcer formally calls forth two distinct representatives, Elwood and Yato, to address the massive crowd of freshmen. Nick leans over and whispers in total confusion, wondering aloud why the Academy bizarrely selected two separate representatives this year. Turning to Elk, Nick casually asks if he knows anything about the girl named Yato, openly admitting his own complete ignorance. Nick gasps in absolute disbelief, demanding to know if Elk seriously has no idea about the situation. The crowd murmurs in awe as the announcer introduces Crown Prince Elwood of the Garway Kingdom, a genius born with a staggering 3 skills. Observing the sheer vastness of the world's talent, Elk silently realizes that he originally expected Rashuo and Sarisa to make a grand appearance. Despite their current absence, one terrifying certainty solidifies in his mind. He knows without a shadow of a doubt that his treacherous siblings are lurking somewhere among the new students. Brushing off his dark thoughts, Elk continues walking forward into the massive academy. Nick excitedly announces that the entrance ceremony is over and suggests they head to the central plaza, where Mary has already saved them seats. Arriving at the plaza, they find Mary fiercely defending her table, furiously refusing to give up the seat she claimed first. A group of intimidating, arrogant upperclassmen tower over the young girl, completely unfazed by her desperate protests. A towering lackey steps forward, haughtily introducing his smug boss as the eldest son of Baron Paisley. The lackey aggressively demands the table, declaring that Marcos Paisley wants the seat and will not take no for an answer. Standing her ground, Mary bravely shouts that a true noble should be deeply ashamed of threatening ordinary people like this. Irritated by her defiance, Marcos complains about the noise and coldly orders his hulking bodyguard, Gambo, to handle the situation. Without a moment of hesitation, the massive brute lunges forward with terrifying speed to assault the defenseless girl. Before the crushing blow can connect, a sudden invisible force violently intercepts the attack midair. Nick desperately rushes in to check on his sister, who breathes a heavy sigh of relief at her sudden rescue. A furious Gambo realizes he is completely paralyzed and violently curses his unseen attacker. Glaring wildly around the plaza, Gambo demands to know what monstrous skill has effortlessly locked his massive body in place. Staring back with icy calm, Elk casually reveals that he is using telekinesis. Sneering in absolute disbelief, Marcos mocks telekinesis as a useless skill and questions how Elk ever got into the academy. Elk bluntly confirms his enrollment, dismissing Marcos's arrogant mockery with a cold, unwavering stare. Furious that his intimidation tactic failed, Marcos aggressively orders Elk to release his suspended bodyguard immediately. Sighing in mild annoyance, Elk maliciously agrees and instantly releases his telekinetic grip on just Gambo's massive arm. The heavy arm violently crashes down onto the table, sending shockwaves through the tense courtyard. Groaning in immense pain, Gambo apologizes to his master as blood profusely leaks from his freshly injured limb. Stepping forward, Elk casts a terrifying shadow over the now trembling nobles. Glaring down at the bullies, Elk darkly asks if they still want to continue this pointless fight. Utterly terrified by his overwhelming presence, Marcos hastily backs down and nervously declines the violent offer. As the nobles frantically retreat, a bewildered Nick demands to know what the hell Elk just did to them. Completely ignoring the frantic questions, Elk cheerfully changes the subject and happily declares that it is time to eat. Later that day, Elk arrives at his designated classroom, joining the rowdy ranks of Year 1, Class F within the skill department. A wildly energetic instructor named Shikaraki dramatically introduces himself and orders the students to state their names, origins, and skills. Pointing randomly across the room, the carefree teacher tells them to say whatever they want, much to the exasperation of his students. A calm and composed girl stands up first, formally introducing herself as Shikiba Yato from the land of Yamato. Suddenly, a furious Gambo stands up and screams his name, proudly declaring himself the future knight of the Log Kingdom. Gambo immediately points a massive finger at Elk, loudly outing his origin as the Deo Kingdom and his supposedly weak skill as telekinesis. The entire classroom instantly falls silent in absolute disbelief at the mention of the universally despised skill. Whispers erupt across the desks as the students stare at Elk with a mixture of shock and sheer pity. Completely unfazed by their condescending stares, Elk maintains his icy composure. Standing tall, Elk firmly confirms his skill is telekinesis, boldly rejecting the societal consensus that it is completely useless. Gambo fiercely mocks him, arrogantly declaring that a weakling who just moves objects will never match a real combat skill. The teacher suddenly interrupts the heated confrontation, calling out to the massive brute with a sly grin. Shikaraki gleefully suggests that if Gambo is so confident, he should just fight Elk to prove his point. Gambo smirks maliciously at the prospect of utterly crushing the arrogant commoner. The teacher officially sanctions the brutal practice match, claiming it will be great preparation for the upcoming freshman martial arts tournament. Adjusting his glasses, Shikaraki notes that there is another very obvious reason to let them brawl. He correctly observes that the two fierce students clearly have some intense personal grudges to violently settle. Relocating to the academy training grounds, Elk sighs internally at how ridiculously fast the situation escalated on his very first day. As the instructor asks if they are ready, Gambo roars in anticipation while Elk calmly confirms his status. Shikaraki enthusiastically raises his hand, preparing to kick off the violent spectacle. With a booming shout, the teacher officially commences the highly anticipated duel. With a booming shout, Shikaraki officially signals the start of the highly anticipated practice match. Wasting absolutely no time, Gambo fiercely charges forward with earth-shattering momentum. Launching his massive frame into the air, the brute prepares to deliver a crushing downward strike. Remaining perfectly calm, Elk quickly channels his internal energy to activate his unique power. Simultaneously, a furious Gambo violently activates his own innate combat ability. Standing his ground, Elk formally declares the activation of his supposedly useless telekinesis. A fierce clash of raw, crackling energy instantly erupts across the devastated training field. Roaring with absolute confidence, Gambo proudly unleashes his formidable steelification ability. He arrogantly boasts that his high-level skill turns his entire body into impenetrable iron, ensuring he has never been wounded. Transforming into a living weapon, the armored giant aggressively lunges at his unarmored opponent. Missing his brutal strike, Gambo stares in utter shock at the empty space before him. He quickly realizes that Elk effortlessly dodged the lethal attack by using his telekinesis to physically support and move his own body. Refusing to be outdone, a frustrated Gambo prepares to unleash an even more devastating follow-up attack. Screaming in pure rage, the armored brute violently slams his metallic fists down toward the earth. A massive dust cloud erupts as the sheer force of Gambo's strike violently shatters the arena floor. As the thick smoke slowly clears, Elk remains completely unharmed while casually floating just above the ruined ground. With a simple gesture, Elk easily catches the massive iron giant in an invisible, unbreakable telekinetic grip. Completely unfazed, Gambo arrogantly gloats that any physical attack is utterly useless against his impenetrable iron body. Sighing in mild annoyance, Elk coldly dismisses his opponent's overwhelming overconfidence. Channeling his psychic power, Elk forcefully lifts the massive brute into the air and begins rapidly spinning him. Highly confused, Gambo loudly mocks Elk for thinking that simply spinning him around will do any actual damage. The dizzying brute stubbornly insists that absolutely nothing Elk tries will ever bypass his ultimate defense. Cutting off the arrogant rant, Elk calmly questions the absolute certainty of his opponent's bold claim. Ramping up his psychic output, Elk drastically increases the violent rotation speed until Gambo becomes a blurred top. Elk coldly explains that even if Gambo's exterior is solid iron, his internal organs remain completely human and vulnerable to extreme centrifugal force. Unable to withstand the sickening G-forces, Gambo's vision instantly blurs as he rapidly approaches unconsciousness. Foaming at the mouth, the massive giant passes out from the intense, dizzying rotation. Releasing his telekinetic hold, Elk casually drops the defeated, unconscious brute violently onto the hard ground. Elk stands victorious over his fallen opponent, perfectly composed and entirely unharmed. Noting the obvious outcome of extreme centrifugal force, Elk casually suggests they quickly transport the broken student to the infirmary. A highly impressed Shikaraki enthusiastically steps forward to officially announce the clear winner of the practice match. Following the brutal conclusion of the bout, the devastated training ground falls completely silent. Suddenly, The massive brute twitches as his incredible willpower forces his broken body to react. Trembling with sheer exhaustion, Gambo stubbornly declares that he is the man destined to become a true knight. His mind flashes back to the desolate log kingdom, a fiercely impoverished country that possessed absolutely nothing of value. He tragically recalls that his homeland relied solely on selling mineral resources, forcing desperate citizens to become either impoverished miners or wandering vagrants. Amidst that desolate environment, young Gambo cherished his noble father as his absolute greatest treasure. Though he never fully understood how it happened, he possessed immense pride in his commoner father miraculously achieving knighthood. A flashback reveals a starry-eyed young Gambo proudly boasting to his peers about his amazing knight father. The bittersweet memory darkens as a cruel voice prepares to shatter the child's naive illusion about what a knight truly is in their kingdom. A bitter memory flashed through Gambo's mind of cruel children mocking his father as nothing more than the king's servant. Defending his father's honor, the young boy constantly found himself getting into brutal street fights. Reaching the pivotal age of 10, Gambo eagerly anticipated receiving his divine blessing from the gods. Although he was thrilled to gain his skill, he quickly realized that achieving his dream of knighthood was completely impossible in his homeland. The impoverished log kingdom only demanded manual laborers, strictly rejecting any need for new nobility. Desperate to escape this bleak fate, Gambo pleaded with his father to let him travel to the great nation of Gallatin. His father warmly agreed, promising to send the boy abroad to study. Looking back on that fateful decision, Gambo finally understood the massive weight of his father's promise. Realizing his father had sacrificed an eye and worn his hands down to the bone, the boy grasped the true cost of his journey. Swearing to live up to those brutal sacrifices, Gambo enrolled in the academy and willingly acted as a loyal servant to the trashy nobles. He endured endless humiliation, silently bowing his head to the arrogant whims of the elite. Suppressing his immense pride, the massive brute allowed his superiors to trample all over his dignity. He even forced himself to commit senseless acts of violence, enduring every terrible demand just to achieve his singular goal. Muttering through sheer exhaustion, the fallen giant desperately repeated his burning desire to become a true knight. Pushed beyond his physical limits, Gambo's battered body miraculously began to tremble and shift on the ruined ground. The crowd watched in utter disbelief as the unconscious brute somehow continued to activate his steelification skill. Stunned observers quickly realized that Gambo was no longer awake, but was moving purely through unstoppable willpower. Driven solely by the emotional essence of his unyielding dream, the battered giant refused to stay down. Elk stared at his struggling opponent, his icy demeanor cracking as he recognized a familiar, desperate resilience. Shikaraki yelled out in total confusion as Elk suddenly dropped his guard and stepped directly toward the towering brute. Squaring up against the unconscious giant, Elk prepared to meet the incoming assault head-on. Staring deeply into Gambo's blank eyes, Elk admitted he despised the brute's violence but understood they were exactly the same. Elk remembered hitting his own breaking point thousands of times during Peppina's grueling training. He confessed that the only thing keeping him moving forward was his absolute, unwavering thirst for revenge. Resonating with Gambo's sheer grit, a terrifying aura of psychic energy violently flared around Elk's body. Acknowledging his opponent's incredible fighting spirit, Elk refused to hold back any longer. Deciding there was only one proper way to honor that resolve, Elk fully unleashed his telekinetic might. Channeling his overwhelming power, he condensed his psychic energy into a singular, devastating strike. Screaming that this was the true end, Elk launched his massive final attack directly at the Iron Giant. An invisible shockwave of sheer kinetic force violently slammed into Gambo's armor chest. A massive explosion of dust and shattered rock completely engulfed the devastated training arena. The sheer, catastrophic impact carved a gigantic crater into the earth, finalizing the brutal duel. Sighing at the unprecedented destruction, Shikaraki noted they needed a healer while finding Elk's telekinesis highly fascinating. Watching from the shadows, a mysterious swordsman smirked and declared it had been a long time since he found an opponent worth cutting down. When questioned by another instructor about the sparring match, Shikaraki admitted the result was completely unprecedented in his teaching career. The teacher marveled at how a mere commoner possessed a seemingly weak skill powerful enough to completely obliterate the martial arts arena. He was equally stunned by the unconscious giant who instinctively activated his defensive skill to survive the catastrophic blow. Chuckling to himself, Shikaraki happily noted that this explosive new generation of first years would definitely keep things from getting boring. heavy rain poured relentlessly outside the academy building. Unsurprisingly, the massive downpour forced a huge crowd of students into the packed cafeteria. Spotting an opening in the chaotic room, Elk's group suddenly perked up. Nick excitedly called out to his friends, eagerly claiming a rare empty table for their group. The group froze as they noticed a massive, intimidating figure already standing near their spot. Elk casually greeted the towering brute, Gumbo, completely unfazed by the sudden tension. Gumbo aggressively told Elk to shut up, while Elk calmly threatened to kill the giant if he didn't sit down. As the four friends casually took their seats, a frustrated student yelled at them for ignoring him, though Elk brushed it off by reminding everyone it was lunchtime. The angry lackey furiously informed the group that the seats were strictly reserved for the noble Marcos. Before the lackey could finish his arrogant rant, he suddenly stopped and gasped in sheer shock. Panicking, the lackey waved frantically to get the approaching Marcos' attention. The lackey nervously gestured toward the stolen table, completely terrified of his master's impending wrath. Marcos glared coldly at the massive Gumbo, his face twisting with absolute disgust. When his female companion asked about the giant, Marcos arrogantly denied knowing such a crude, classless thug. Marcos loudly mocked Gumbo as a disgraceful loser, pointing out how pathetic it was to bully others only to lose to a commoner's weak telekinesis. Marcos smugly declared exactly what he would do if he ever suffered such a humiliating public defeat. The arrogant noble coldly stated that he would have dropped out of the academy on his own out of pure shame. Dismissing the massive brute entirely, Marcos ordered his companion Rox to leave the area with him. Gumbo remained frozen in place, his massive frame trembling under the agonizing weight of the crushing humiliation. The surrounding students gasped as an intense, heavy atmosphere suffocated the crowded cafeteria. Nick hesitantly tried to call out to the devastated giant, hoping to ease the brutal tension. Gumbo slowly lifted his dark, furious gaze toward the trembling merchant boy. Glaring fiercely at Nick, Gumbo warned the boy not to offer any sickeningly sweet comfort. Nick stammered nervously, completely intimidated by the brute's boiling, unchecked rage. Gumbo viciously snapped at the boy to shut up and get lost. An enraged student suddenly stepped forward, aggressively challenging Gumbo's foul attitude. The angry student ordered Elk to step up and deal with the giant idiot. Furious at the brute's high and mighty attitude, the crowd viciously urged Elk to knock Gumbo out just like he did yesterday. A student violently mocked Gumbo's dream, screaming that a loser like him could never become a knight while demanding Elk teach him a lesson. The entire cafeteria erupted into a toxic chant, aggressively demanding that Elk completely get rid of the hulking brute. Mary desperately pleaded for everyone to stop the senseless cruelty, tugging nervously at her brother's sleeve. Nick frantically tried to de-escalate the volatile situation, begging the riled-up crowd to immediately calm down. The mob completely ignored Nick, furiously chanting for violence as Elk sat in absolute, icy silence. Deafening chants echoed through the hall, creating an overwhelming wave of pure hostility directed at the broken giant. Elk's eyes narrowed dangerously as a terrifying wave of unseen kinetic force abruptly erupted from his body. Irritated by the noise, Elk coldly suggested the cowardly mob challenge Gumbo themselves instead of ordering him around. Elk fiercely laid down the law, aggressively declaring that he was currently in the middle of a private conversation with Gumbo. Floating trays and debris levitated ominously around Elk, physically manifesting his lethal, barely suppressed irritation. Glaring daggers at the terrified crowd, Elk politely but firmly demanded that everyone else keep their mouths completely shut. The aggressive mob instantly froze in absolute terror, utterly silenced by Elk's overwhelming psychic pressure. Elk sighed in deep relief as the oppressive noise finally died down, welcoming the sudden peace and quiet. Gumbo stared in stunned silence, completely thrown off by Elk aggressively defending him from the vicious crowd. Turning his attention back to the massive brute, Elk calmly asked what he had been trying to say earlier. Gumbo gritted his teeth and stubbornly declared that he had absolutely nothing to say to his rival. Glaring defiantly at the boy who defeated him, the proud giant refused to yield a single inch. Abruptly standing up from the table, Elk apologizes to his friends and excuses himself to take care of something. A confused Nick watches him leave, pointing out that Elk hasn't even eaten his lunch yet. Nick calls out to his departing friend in vain as Elk swiftly exits the cafeteria. Emma watches him go, her mind flashing back to Elk's dark vow to seek revenge rather than return as a noble. She silently admits that hearing those chilling words has kept her constantly on edge. Staring down at the table, a somber and anxious expression clouds Emma's face. She confesses her lingering fear that entering the elite academy would corrupt the kindest person she had ever known. Smiling softly, she feels a wave of relief realizing that Elk is currently rushing off because he is genuinely worried about someone else. Outside, a heavy downpour relentlessly batters the academy grounds. Gumbo stands completely alone in the freezing rain, his massive frame hunched in defeat. The crushing memory of Marcos brutally mocking his humiliating loss echoes painfully in the giant's mind. Staring at his massive hands, Gumbo bitterly laments his pathetic state after traveling so far just to become a knight. Approaching from behind, Elk calmly asks the devastated brute if he truly believes his own self-deprecating words. Noting that Gumbo is getting completely soaked, Elk casually suggests they head back inside. Gumbo whips around furiously, demanding to know if Elk even realizes whose fault this entire disaster is. Elk bluntly reminds the giant that he started it by mocking his telekinesis, an ability Elk undeniably proved wasn't useless during their brutal match. Frustrated by the airtight logic, Gumbo angrily accuses Elk of just babbling and stating the obvious. Stepping closer, Elk firmly acknowledges that he knows exactly how hard Gumbo has worked and how desperately he wants to be a knight. Elk reveals he clearly recognized that shared, burning drive during their fierce clash yesterday. Utterly confused by the sudden empathy, Gumbo defensively demands to know what Elk is playing at. Gumbo aggressively questions what the commoner could possibly want from him even after acknowledging his strength. Elk stands quietly in the pouring rain, completely unbothered by the giant's explosive outburst. Staring directly into Gumbo's eyes, Elk calmly proposes a formal reconciliation. Gumbo freezes, completely bewildered by the unexpected offer. Shrugging casually, Elk points out they were never truly on bad terms and suggests they simply make up. Infuriated by the sheer absurdity, Gumbo loudly questions Elk's intelligence and asks if they are suddenly supposed to be best friends. Smiling warmly, Elk notes that surviving a fair and serious battle together naturally makes them friends. Gumbo stares at him in stunned silence, completely disarmed by Elk's straightforward logic. Elk deals the final blow by pointing out he is definitely a better friend than Marcos, who clearly never cared about the giant. Clenching his fists, Gumbo processes the harsh but undeniable truth of Elk's words. Clicking his tongue in defeat, Gumbo loudly admits he was completely wrong to ever mock telekinesis. Pointing a massive finger at Elk, Gumbo fiercely warns that their new friendship won't stop him from going all out next time. Elk laughs warmly at the challenge, promising to fight with everything he has as well. His spirits lifted, Gumbo enthusiastically agrees and happily suggests they finally head back inside. The newly forged friends walk side by side through the rain, leaving their bitter rivalry behind. Stopping abruptly in the hallway, Elk calls out to get the giant's attention. The two boys examine a flashy flyer advertising the highly anticipated skill martial arts tournament. Reviewing the rules, Gumbo notes that while the solo matches are fine, the freshman tournament specifically requires 3-person teams. Gumbo excitedly declares they need to find one more person, leaving a stunned Elk to realize he has already been drafted into the team. Meanwhile, in a dark and opulent academy corridor, two familiar figures stride confidently forward. Sarisa and Rashuo walk shoulder to shoulder, exuding an aura of arrogant nobility. Sarisa glances at her older brother, curiously asking for his initial thoughts on the prestigious academy. Rashuo maintains a haughty, disinterested expression as he continues down the hall. Scoffing arrogantly, Rashuo coldly dismisses the entire elite institution as being filled with absolute nobodies. Suddenly, Elk stops in his tracks as a familiar, chilling presence washes over him. Turning his head, Elk glares down a distant hallway as his expression twists into a mask of pure rage. A dark, terrifying aura engulfs the young outcast as he realizes he has finally found his targets. Unable to contain his boiling fury, his immense telekinetic pressure violently cracks the nearby stone wall. Staring with murderous intent, Elk silently confirms that he has finally located his treacherous siblings. The scene opens with a tense atmosphere as chaos suddenly begins to unfold. Students frantically back away, wondering aloud what is wrong with Elk and questioning if his skill is going berserk. A massive explosion of telekinetic power erupts from his body, threatening to consume the surrounding area. Panicking onlookers desperately beg Elk to stop, fearing the entire academy will be destroyed at this rate. The sheer force of the rampaging skill creates a deafening roar as debris flies violently through the air. Realizing Elk is completely unconscious, a classmate named Gumbo activates his steelification skill to intervene. Lunging forward with a hardened body, Gumbo yells that he will wake Elk up right now. He plunges directly into the violent storm of erratic telekinetic energy. Gumbo cries out in sudden agony as the immense pressure instantly crushes his hardened arm. Staring in pure disbelief, he realizes his steelified limb was shattered in a mere fraction of a second. Retreating momentarily, he concludes that half-baked hardness will never allow him to get close enough. Changing tactics, Gumbo decides to steelify his entire body and shrink himself down to a highly dense mass. Transforming into a single block of iron, he prepares to withstand the crushing telekinetic pressure with everything he has. Charging back into the fray, he pushes relentlessly through the overwhelming, invisible force. Reaching the center of the storm, he delivers a desperate strike and screams for Elk to snap out of it. The powerful blow connects squarely, instantly disrupting the chaotic flow of energy. As the swirling dust begins to settle, Elk slowly starts to regain his scattered senses. The violent telekinetic storm finally subsides entirely, leaving behind a heavily damaged and smoking corridor. Exhausted and battered, Gumbo mutters with a sigh that Elk really put him through the ringer. Elk clicks his tongue, slowly realizing the sheer magnitude of the catastrophic destruction he caused. Exactly 1 week later, the scene shifts to the Academy's bustling training ground. This vast, specialized facility is located deep within the sprawling Academy campus. Students gather here regularly to practice mock battles and undergo intense skill enhancement training. Approaching his friend, Elk quietly asks Gumbo if he is truly fully healed from the devastating incident. Brushing off the concern, Gumbo assures him it was nothing serious since the Academy boasts top-tier medical staff. He explains that the advanced healing skills of the staff had him entirely back to full health by the end of that very day. Elk lowers his head, offering a quiet and guilt-ridden apology for the immense harm he caused. Elk recalls waking up in his dorm after being treated, where Emma and Nick explained how he and Gumbo were carried to the infirmary. Fortunately, the teachers were lenient since skill rampages are common for young students, and the damaged hallway was already repaired. Still visibly shaken by his total loss of control, Elk earnestly apologizes to Gumbo one more time. Smiling warmly, Gumbo corrects him, insisting that true friends should say thank you instead of apologizing. Shifting the focus, Gumbo reminds Elk that they need to find a teammate for the upcoming martial arts tournament today. Nodding in firm agreement, Elk acknowledges the pressing task at hand. Ready to move forward, Gumbo cheerfully calls out to Elk as they prepare to begin their search. The Combat Skill Department's martial arts tournament is a major event held 3 times a year, featuring matches for all year levels. Meanwhile, the Commerce Skill Department hosts an arts festival where students run mock shops, attracting nobles and famous merchants. These 2 major academy events heavily impact student grades, making it absolutely crucial to find a 3rd team member before the entry deadlines. Elk firmly agrees, fully aware of the high stakes involved for their academic future. However, their subsequent search is met with quick rejections from classmates who apologize but claim they have no interest in team matches. Other students outright refuse without hesitation, brushing the offer off as way too much of a hassle to even bother with. Continuing their search, Elk notes that the 2 people they had in mind turned them down, forcing them to keep looking. Suddenly, a frantic voice shouts out to the 2 of them, desperately trying to get their attention. Gumbo spots a massive wrecking ball hurtling straight toward them and screams for Elk to run. The heavy iron ball closes the distance in a split second, threatening to crush them completely. Without flinching, Elk raises his hand and unleashes his telekinetic power to catch the devastating projectile midair. The sheer force of the impact sends violent shockwaves rippling through the surrounding training ground. Suspended entirely in the air, the massive wrecking ball completely halts its destructive momentum. With a heavy thud, the metallic sphere drops harmlessly onto the dirt floor. Peering ahead through the dust, Gumbo realizes that the person who launched the wrecking ball is rapidly approaching them. Elk calmly asks the newcomer what they are doing training all alone. Stepping into the light, a confident girl with short hair smirks at the boys. Annoyed by the reckless attack, Elk questions if she is aiming at something specific and suggests she train elsewhere. Smiling sharply, she clarifies that this is not just self-training, noting that most people cannot even follow her movements with their eyes. She confidently declares that she is actually in the middle of a serious match. Suddenly, a large opponent materializes behind her, cursing her slippery movements and preparing to strike. Sensing the imminent attack, she swiftly shifts her stance to react. Leaping high into the air, her muscular opponent declares that she will not be able to dodge his massive attack. He brings a devastating, heavy-hitting weapon crashing down toward her head. Just as the weapon is about to connect, she vanishes completely from sight, leaving her attacker thoroughly bewildered. Appearing instantly in the sky above him, she positions herself for a flawless counterattack. With blinding speed, she drives a powerful kick squarely into his exposed back. The overwhelming force of her strike completely shatters his guard and sends him plummeting downward. He crashes face-first into the dirt, entirely incapacitated by the heavy blow. Landing gracefully, she playfully mocks his lack of speed while genuinely praising him for a good match. Observing the brief fight, Elk analytically notes that she neutralized her opponent with 0 wasted movements. Hearing his high praise, the girl gleefully boasts that his compliments are making her blush. She beams a wide, energetic smile at the 2 astonished boys. Introducing herself as Fine from Class B, she enthusiastically greets her fellow first-year students. Fine showers them with praise, highly impressed by Elk's raw ability to stop the wrecking ball dead in its tracks. Turning her attention to Gumbo, she excitedly assumes his incredible physique comes from a physical enhancement skill. Shifting back to Elk, she aggressively interrogates him about his mysterious, seemingly magic-based skill. Uncomfortable with her intense energy, Elk mutters to Gumbo that they should find another training ground to avoid this weirdo. Laughing mischievously, Fine boldly challenges their attempt to run away from her. Activating her power, she proudly reveals her combat skill as acceleration. In the blink of an eye, she closes the distance, confidently stating that absolutely nobody can match her speed. Cornering Elk, she demands that he reveal his skill since she already shared hers. Reluctantly giving in, Elk bluntly admits to her that his skill is telekinesis. Fine stares at him in utter confusion, repeating the word in total disbelief. Rejecting his honest answer, she loudly accuses him of lying, insisting that telekinesis could never stop a wrecking ball. Stepping forward defensively, Gumbo fiercely vouches for his friend, confirming that Elk is telling the absolute truth. Fine crosses her arms, deeply pondering the muscular boy's serious testimony. Conceding slightly, she playfully agrees to believe him simply because the muscle guy verified it, much to Gumbo's confusion. Getting uncomfortably close, Fine compliments Gumbo's physique and boldly invites him to train with her. She flexes cheerfully, completely unfazed by their visible and awkward hesitation. Not missing a single beat, Elk coldly and immediately rejects her offer. Surprised but undeterred, Fine listens as Elk explains that they are not actually here to train today. Piecing the entire situation together, she accurately guesses they are looking for a teammate for the martial arts tournament and confidently offers to join. Boasting that she is the fastest and strongest student present, Fine promises them smooth sailing if they team up. Whispering quietly to Gumbo, Elk acknowledges that her speed, power, and combat fundamentals are exceptionally solid despite her eccentric personality. Overjoyed by their silent agreement, Fine claps her hands together and excitedly asks for their names. Yielding to her overwhelming momentum, the 2 boys finally introduce themselves as Elk and Gumbo. Declaring their meeting as pure fate, Fine enthusiastically vows to do her absolute best alongside her new teammates. Exhausted by her relentless energy, Elk and Gumbo can only offer a tired, hesitant sigh of agreement. Observing the massive crowd, Gumbo notes the long line at the reception for freshman applicants, realizing fighting in the tournament should be optional for the first term. Elk agrees with him, deducing that every single person in the skill department this year must think highly of their own abilities. Throwing his fist into the air, Gumbo proudly declares that Team Gumbo will be the one standing at the absolute top of the podium. Annoyed by his loud boasting, Elk wonders why Gumbo is riling everyone up and desperately asks Finn to tell him off. Instead of helping, Finn cheerfully points at a random student, complimenting his muscles and asking if he is joining the individual matches too. Startled by the sudden attention, the student explains he is applying for team battles and politely wishes them fun with their matches. Glancing around the bustling hall, Elk reflects on how confident everyone in the skill department is this year. A darker thought crosses Elk's mind as he stares intently at his application form. He realizes that if his cruel siblings also participate in the tournament, a confrontation might be entirely unavoidable. Holding the application tightly, Elk firmly decides that this tournament will serve as the perfect stage for his revenge. Acknowledging the danger, Elk resolves to keep his friends out of his personal vendetta since this fight has nothing to do with them. Lost in his intense thoughts, Elk accidentally bumps shoulders with another student in the crowded hallway. Snapping back to reality, Elk immediately turns and apologizes for his clumsiness. The young man turns his head slightly, acknowledging the sudden collision. Flashing a casual smile, The boy dismisses the apology and tells Elk not to worry about it. Recognizing his face instantly, Elk realizes this is the esteemed student who spoke at the entrance ceremony. Accurately reading Elk's surprised expression, the boy guesses that Elk is wondering what someone like him is doing waiting in a line. While Elk flusters a denial, the boy cheerfully explains he always wanted to wait in a long queue himself since his servants back home usually handle everything. Changing the subject, Elk notices the two forms in the boy's hand and asks if he is applying for the individual matches as well. With a bright and confident smile, the boy confirms that Elk is completely spot on. Pointing out their similarities, the boy notes that they are both in the exact same boat. Tilting his head curiously, the boy then asks Elk how his team is currently looking. Considering his eccentric teammates, Elk humbly admits that he wouldn't say their teamwork is exactly perfect. However, Elk's expression hardens as he confidently adds that they all share a common, unifying goal. Intrigued by this unwavering determination, the boy asks what that goal could possibly be. Staring forward with absolute resolve, Elk simply states that their shared goal is victory. Suddenly, a receptionist's voice echoes from the front desk, calling for the next applicant. Startled by the prompt, the boy realizes it is finally his turn to submit his application. Pausing for a moment, the boy compliments the fierce look in Elk's eyes, assuming his team must be truly great. The boy turns his back to Elk, preparing to walk toward the reception counter. Stopping abruptly in his tracks, the boy casts a heavy, serious glance over his shoulder. He boldly claims that his own team is perfectly capable of taking on Elk's, boasting that they have the greatest swordsman and magician on their side. A tense and heavy silence hangs in the air as the boy's confident words sink in. Smiling dangerously, the boy expresses his sheer excitement for what lies ahead, especially when they eventually face off. Elk stares silently in return, fully absorbing the heavy weight of the boy's confident declaration. Having finished his business, Elk steps outside and walks away from the bustling reception area. Outside the building, a girl waits patiently, wondering aloud if her teammates are still busy with their applications. Spotting his acquaintance, Elk calls out to Mary as he steps out into the courtyard. Turning around, Mary warmly greets Elk by his name. Waving goodbye, the rival student calls out a final farewell as he announces that his group is heading off first. A student confirms he is only applying for the individual matches and asks Mary if she is entering the tournament too. Declining the team matches, Mary expresses her excitement to see just how far she can get using her sword. A sharp voice abruptly interrupts her, harshly demanding that she cut it out. Startled by the sudden intrusion, she recognizes the newcomer as Shikiba Yato from her class. Yato steps forward, aggressively questioning her claim about being a true sword wielder. Gripping her weapon defensively, Mary confirms her statement and asks what it matters to him. Yato coldly stares her down, bluntly stating that she does not smell like a real warrior. Completely taken aback by the insult, Mary demands to know what he is talking about. Leaning in closer, he explains that he does not smell blood on her, deducing that she has never killed or faced true danger. He warns her to rescind her application immediately, stating that she will die instantly if she fights with a sword swung purely for fun. Mary glares back at him in silence, deeply insulted by his arrogant dismissal of her combat skills. Gripping her hilt tightly, she promises there will be no fun and fiercely offers him a taste of her swordplay right here and now. Unfazed by her threat, Yato calmly clarifies that his warning was not meant to be a cheap provocation. He points out that the sheer difference in their skills is obvious since he has not even bothered to reach for his own weapon yet. Outraged by his absolute disrespect, Mary fiercely prepares to draw her blade in retaliation. Elk suddenly steps in and orders Mary to drop it, warning her that there are far too many eyes around to draw a sword here. The three students stand locked in a tense standoff, with the atmosphere crackling with unresolved aggression. Though clearly frustrated by the interruption, Mary reluctantly yields to Elk's command and steps down. Glaring daggers at Yato, she declares that the upcoming tournament will prove whether her sword is truly just for show. Yato simply smirks back, questioning her confidence with a mocking, dismissive tone. Ignoring Mary entirely, Yato shifts his intense gaze and announces that he is genuinely looking forward to crossing swords. To Mary's absolute shock, Yato directly addresses Elk as his true rival instead of her. Caught completely off guard, Elk groans in annoyance, seriously wondering why he is suddenly being targeted. Standing frozen in disbelief, Mary realizes with crushing humiliation that Yato does not even consider her a worthy opponent. The tension lingers heavily as the massive academy building stands tall in the background. Noticing her crushed spirit, Elk attempts to console Mary by telling her not to let a cheap taunt get under her skin. Mary snaps out of her daze and angrily yells at Elk as he begins to casually walk away. Walking away from the chaotic encounter, Elk thoughtfully mutters that it looks like he is not the only one here. He deduces that many other students are entering this year's tournament with dark, ulterior motives. Meanwhile, in a grand and lavishly decorated room, a completely different meeting is taking place. The princely student from the reception hall returns to his waiting teammates, apologizing for the delay and confirming their team application is submitted. He warmly greets his two powerful companions by name, revealing them to be Elk's cruel siblings, Sarisa and Rashuo. Sarisa respectfully addresses him as Prince Elwood, politely insisting that he did not need to trouble himself when her friends could have done it. Prince Elwood casually brushes off her formality, humbly stating that he is just like any other student at the academy. Framing himself as a decent guy, Elwood notes with a sly smile that he actually met a very interesting freshman while waiting in line. Intrigued by this revelation, Rashuo wonders aloud who could possibly manage to catch the eye of the three-skill genius prince. Flashing a wide, arrogant grin, Prince Elwood cheerfully confirms the fateful encounter. Rashuo hums thoughtfully, clearly curious about the identity of this mysterious new rival. Exuding absolute confidence, Elwood boasts that his team possesses Rashuo, the genius sword saint, and his gifted magician sister, the magic saint Sarisa. Pointing proudly to himself, the prince declares that with his own power included, ultimate victory in the tournament is as good as theirs. The scene opens on the chaotic training grounds where students are intensely practicing for the upcoming martial arts tournament. An irritated instructor barks at the students to stop slacking off, while one observer nervously points out a pair of absolute maniacs fighting nearby. Glancing in the indicated direction, the students spot two incredibly intense figures clashing violently on the open field. Finn and Gumbo engage in a high-speed, earth-shattering melee exchange that leaves the spectators in pure awe. The two powerful fighters trade blindingly fast blows, kicking up a massive cloud of dust with their sheer physical prowess. Leaping backward, Finn flips gracefully through the air to create some much-needed distance from her hulking opponent. Landing smoothly on her feet, she immediately braces herself for Gumbo's relentless and heavy counterattack. Gumbo accurately deduces that Finn uses her thick-soled boots as lethal weapons, noting she clearly has extensive martial arts experience. Finn confidently explains she grew up fighting, prompting Gumbo to mutter in annoyance at the immense challenge she poses. Pushing off the ground with explosive acceleration, Finn violently charges straight back at her towering opponent. She warns him that his solid form actually makes him vulnerable, threatening to exploit any opening he leaves completely by the book. Reacting instantly, Gumbo hardens his arm into solid steel to block her devastating, incoming kick. As her specialized boot collides with his steelified arm, a massive shockwave violently erupts from the point of impact. Barely surviving the intense clash, they lock eyes fiercely, both fully prepared to escalate the brutal fight to the next level. Before they can unleash their ultimate moves, Elk abruptly shouts at them to hold it and halts the escalating brawl. Reminding them that this is merely a practice match, Elk warns the overeager duo that the other students are starting to stare. Cooling down instantly, Finn apologizes for getting carried away and agrees there is no need to reveal all their secret techniques before the actual tournament. Changing the subject entirely, Finn suddenly turns to Elk and interrogates him about the location of his combat gear. Elk looks at them in genuine confusion, realizing for the very first time that his new teammates are dressed rather uniquely. Gumbo explains they wear outfits tailored specifically to their skills, noting his own clothing is lightweight since his body becomes actual armor. Backing him up, Finn reveals her gloves and boots are fully custom-made because her extreme speed would tear through normal gear instantly. Realizing he just plans to wear something easy to move in, Elk blankly admits he has absolutely no specialized equipment prepared for the high-stakes tournament. As Finn screams in disbelief that Elk plans to claim victory in simple track pants, a frantic voice suddenly calls out his name from behind. Turning around, Elk sees a completely exhausted student who joyfully cries out that she has finally managed to track him down. Panting heavily to catch her breath, the girl explains that Mary sent her and stresses she has something incredibly urgent to discuss. With a desperate, pleading look in her eyes, she urgently begs Elk to do her a massive favor. An anticipatory silence fills the grand arena as the crowd eagerly awaits the start of the event. Tapping the microphone to test the audio, the announcer apologizes for the delay and declares that it is finally time to begin. With a booming voice that echoes across the stadium, he officially kicks off the grand opening ceremony. the announcer gracefully yields the floor, introducing the headmaster for his highly anticipated opening speech. Stepping up to the podium with a stern expression, the headmaster clears his throat and promises to keep his remarks brief. He bluntly encourages the students to go all out in their matches, assuring them that any injuries will be easily handled with Dr. Nightingale present. With that single, pragmatic piece of advice, the headmaster abruptly concludes his remarkably short speech. Seamlessly taking over again, the announcer transitions to the next item on the agenda mentioned by the headmaster. He formally introduces the tournament's chief medical officer, noting her prestigious status as the Academy's health doctor and a member of the elite 5 stars. The announcer gestures toward the stage, asking the crowd to give a warm welcome to the esteemed Dr. Nightingale. Murmuring among themselves, students whisper in awe about her S-ranked abilities representing the absolute highest tier of power. Another student realizes she is the legendary doctor they had heard rumors about, fully understanding why she holds such an elite title. Stepping confidently into the spotlight, Dr. Nightingale takes the microphone and surveys the silent, expectant crowd. A heavy, intimidating silence falls over the stadium as the powerful doctor prepares to speak her mind. Echoing the headmaster's brutal sentiment, she casually confirms that absolutely any injury, including death itself, can be fully healed within a single day. Pausing for dramatic effect, she lets the sheer weight of her divine healing capabilities sink into the terrified students. She coldly commands the participants to fight to their absolute limits, urging them to intimately learn from the inevitable pain and despair of death. As she steps down from the podium, the headmaster calmly praises her for the chilling, yet effective, address. Questioning his judgment, an observant staff member asks the headmaster if such terrifying words were truly appropriate for new students. Dismissing the concern entirely, the headmaster confidently replies that her harsh warning will perfectly force the students to brace themselves for the brutal reality ahead. He emphasizes that this grim realization is crucial for everyone, from the elites in the main hall to the underdogs relegated to the waiting rooms. Meanwhile, deep inside the crowded waiting rooms, nervous participants watch the broadcast with a mixture of excitement and dread. Sitting impatiently in the staging area, Gumbo and Finn anxiously await their turn to enter the fray. Slamming his fist in frustration, Gumbo complains about being stuck in the waiting room while Finn calmly reminds him that they have no other choice. She rationally explains that with over 100 teams competing, only the top-tier noble elites are granted the privilege of attending the ceremony in person. As the clock ticks down, the tense atmosphere in the cramped room only continues to grow heavier. Checking the time, Gumbo wonders aloud if their missing third member is finally going to show up. Remaining optimistic, Finn assures her hulking teammate that Elk promised to make it and will surely arrive any second now. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to them from the doorway, instantly grabbing their attention. Stepping confidently into the room, Elk formally apologizes to his teammates for keeping them in suspense. He explains that the final adjustments to his gear took much longer than he had originally anticipated. Gumbo casually brushes off the delay, while Finn loudly marvels at how incredibly awesome his brand new combat outfit looks. Smiling warmly, Elk fondly recalls the frantic moments leading up to this exact arrival. He remembers how his loyal maid Emma had desperately tracked him down on the training field to ask for an urgent favor. Completely out of breath from her frantic sprint, she struggled to compose herself before delivering her message. Worried by her sudden appearance, Elk had asked her what was wrong and pressed for details regarding this mysterious favor. Catching her breath, Emma explained that after hearing from Mary about his participation, she rushed over because she realized he lacked a proper combat outfit. Touched by her incredible dedication, Elk listened closely as she nervously prepared her earnest request. Blushing with determination, Emma bravely asked for permission to use her humble sewing skill to craft his official tournament battle gear. Overjoyed by the offer, Elk eagerly accepted her proposal, placing his complete trust in her capable hands as he geared up for victory. Bursting with sudden enthusiasm, Emma desperately asks if she can help with anything, offering to do whatever it takes to support Elk. Flustered by her immediate eagerness, Elk stammers that she does not need to strip right now while she urgently asks to take his measurements. Skipping forward in time, Elk finally gets to test out his newly tailored, sleek dark combat gear. Elk praises the incredible craftsmanship, marveling at how sturdy yet lightweight the outfit feels as Emma proudly asks about the fit. Popping cheerfully into the room, Finn proudly explains that she provided the special martial arts fiber, boasting about its extreme toughness. Elk gratefully acknowledges her contribution as Finn explains she had the extra fabric shipped straight from her family's dojo in Bard. Focusing closely on the design, Emma asks Elk to stretch both his arms out to test the flexibility of his new sleeves. As Elk extends his arms, a sharp, hidden blade suddenly springs forth from his wrist with a metallic flick. Startled by the dangerous and unexpected mechanism, Elk closely inspects the deadly hidden blade. Gumbo confidently claims credit for the weapon, boasting that his homeland steel is absolutely second to none. He proudly declares that the blade is forged from the highest quality iron, making it entirely immune to cheap knockoffs. Elk softly says Gumbo's name, deeply moved by his muscular friend's generous and lethal contribution. Analyzing the overall aesthetic, Elk quickly realizes the hidden blade and edgy design do not match Emma's usual style at all. He closely inspects the sleek half-mask, entirely convinced that someone else heavily influenced this dark, assassin-like look. Emma awkwardly confesses that a black-haired student with a sword advised her to base the design on the assassin class from the Yamato Kingdom. Admitting her initial reservations, Emma confesses that she honestly did not want him carrying anything dangerous into battle. Clenching her fists, she passionately explains that she ultimately decided to do absolutely everything in her power to leave no regrets. She adds that she included the mask to hide his face, fearing his cruel peers from the Dao Kingdom might recognize him and cause trouble. Touched by her overwhelming consideration, Elk realizes she carefully thought through every single protective detail just for his sake. A new voice playfully chimes in from the doorway, reminding Elk that others helped out as well. Mary and Nick casually stroll into the room, congratulating Elk on his completed combat outfit coming together without a hitch. Nick proudly boasts that, as a Merchant Guild heir, he managed the budget perfectly to keep the expensive material costs down for everyone. Stepping aside humbly, Nick firmly reminds Elk that the one who worked the absolute hardest was Emma. Elk smiles softly, completely agreeing with Nick's highly accurate assessment of Emma's intense hard work. Blushing deeply, Emma nervously deflects the immense praise, claiming she simply did what she wanted to do. Smiling brightly at his dedicated maid, Elk prepares to express his genuine, heartfelt gratitude. Placing a gentle hand on her head, Elk warmly and sincerely thanks Emma for everything she has done for him. Overwhelmed by his kindness, Emma bursts into happy tears, insisting she should be thanking him for finally giving her a chance to return the favor. Finn, Mary, and Gumbo immediately gang up to tease Elk, jokingly calling him a heartbreaker and the absolute worst for making his maid cry. Frantically wiping her eyes, Emma defends him, explaining she is just crying because she is so incredibly lucky to have such wonderful friends. Beaming brightly through her joyful tears, Emma declares how incredibly glad she is to have come to this wonderful academy. Gazing fondly at his chaotic but deeply loyal group of friends, Elk warmly agrees with her sweet sentiment. Their heartfelt moment is abruptly interrupted by an announcement calling all team battle participants to the main arena to explain the flag battle rules. The stadium announcer loudly declares that before the rule explanation begins, the elite representative team will now make their official vow. A massive, roaring crowd cheers enthusiastically as the top-tier students prepare to take the grand stage. The announcer confidently calls out the names of Prince Elwood, Rashuo Kinesis, and Sarisa Kinesis, commanding the powerhouse trio to step forward. Standing before the massive crowd, the representative team finishes their vow by declaring that their first priority is absolute victory. Prince Elwood confidently declares that they will fight with pure honor and unwavering integrity. He finishes the solemn oath by promising to battle valiantly until the very end. The elite trio bow their heads, though a dark and arrogant smirk plays across their faces. Watching from the sidelines, Elk cynically thinks it is impossible to take those words about honor seriously with his cruel siblings standing right there. Noticing his tense demeanor, Finn leans in and comments that something feels noticeably off about him. She playfully pokes at his shoulder, loudly asking if he is secretly getting nervous. Brushing off her concern, Elk looks at his fully geared squad and proudly declares that their team is completely ready for battle. Pumping her fists in excitement, Finn cheers that all that is left to do now is secure a total victory. Staring ahead with fierce determination, Elk confirms that the three of them share the exact same goal of ultimate victory. Releasing a heavy sigh, Elk refocuses on the present, resolving to only trust his teammates as it is finally time for the rules to be explained. Peering closely at the stage, Gumbo points out the presenter just as he announces he will explain the rules for the upcoming flag battle. Recognizing the speaker, Finn excitedly identifies him as Shikaraki-sensei while he clears his throat to detail the simple rules. Shikaraki-sensei explains that each squad will receive a single flag and must hunt down other teams to steal theirs. Setting the stakes, he reveals that every team must collect 3 flags within a strict 7-hour time limit to advance to the final round. He outlines the harsh reality of the tournament, stating that teams will be divided between the victorious who move forward and the eliminated who are sent back to the waiting room. Emphasizing a crucial restriction, the instructor warns that flags can only be legally taken if an opponent is rendered entirely incapacitated or unconscious. Nodding in understanding, the crowd listens closely as he adds that stealing a flag from an already fallen opponent is also perfectly acceptable. Concluding his brief presentation, he thanks the students for their understanding and orders them to proceed immediately to the battle arena. The massive crowd of eager students begins to shift, buzzing with intense adrenaline as they march toward the combat zones. Surveying the determined faces around him, Elk notes that absolutely everyone looks ready for the brutal upcoming clashes. Stepping out from the departing crowd, Nick suddenly appears to offer his final words of encouragement. Nick wishes the trio the best of luck while Mary quickly snaps at her brother, insisting she does not need him to speak for her. Smiling softly at their fierce loyalty, Elk mentally acknowledges just how incredibly strong and reliable his allies truly are. The energetic atmosphere suddenly shifts as a tense silence falls over a corner of the busy waiting room. Turning around in confusion, Elk calls out to Gumbo as his massive friend abruptly stops walking. Staring straight ahead with a deeply solemn expression, the hulking student braces himself for a heavy confession. Dropping his head in a deep, formal bow, Gumbo suddenly offers a profound and sincere apology. Utterly taken aback by the unprompted gesture, Elk stammers out a confused question regarding this sudden behavior. Realizing what this is about, an ally quietly asks if this heavy apology is regarding what happened during their very first meeting. Refusing to make excuses, Gumbo admits his past actions were completely disgraceful and states he does not expect any forgiveness. Pleading desperately, he insists he must apologize because otherwise, he has absolutely no right to accept their incredible support. Stunned by the giant's raw vulnerability, Elk struggles to find the right words to comfort his guilt-ridden friend. Stepping forward with gentle authority, a calm voice orders Gumbo to raise his head, warmly declaring that any friend of Elk's is a friend of theirs. The comforting voice firmly reassures the towering student that supporting a cherished friend is the most natural thing in the world. Overwhelmed by the boundless grace, Gumbo slowly straightens up and offers a trembling, heartfelt word of gratitude. Observing from a distance within the participants' waiting room, a shadow rival wonders exactly what bizarre exchange just took place. Watching closely, the rival questions why a powerhouse like Gumbo is bowing his head so deeply to Elk. Unaware of the distant spectator, Elk remains silent, deeply moved by the incredible sincerity of his loyal friends. Staring at his own hands, Elk questions his internal morality, wondering if it is right to seek dark revenge while surrounded by such wonderful comrades. Blinding light suddenly consumes the arena as everyone is transported in complete silence. Caught in the blinding flash, the participants are completely engulfed by the teleportation magic. Elk suddenly materializes in midair, landing safely on the ground of an unfamiliar location. Staring blankly at his surroundings, he takes in the dense, towering trees of the new environment. Completely caught off guard by the sudden shift, Elk exclaims in pure surprise. Examining a strange glowing device attached to his arm, he wonders aloud where he has been sent. Stepping out from the nearby foliage, Gumbo and Finn casually call out to their confused leader. Whirling around, Elk is visibly relieved and surprised to see that his teammates spawned right next to him. Examining the flag attached to their gear, Finn realizes this is how they were transported and declares that the battle has finally begun. Readying his stance, Elk mentally prepares himself for the intense first round of the tournament. The arena is officially revealed as a massive forest-type dungeon known as the Great Sea of Trees, Philo's Forest. A sweeping view of the sprawling, densely wooded dungeon highlights the massive scale of their battlefield. Gumbo aggressively suggests they just find and crush an enemy team, but Finn firmly reminds him they need a solid plan before rushing in. Walking slightly ahead of his bickering teammates, Elk falls deep into silent thought. He anxiously debates whether he should reveal his true objective for joining the tournament, fearing it might cause unnecessary confusion during such a crucial match. However, he firmly realizes that if they end up facing his cruel siblings Rashuo and Sarisa, he will absolutely have to tell his friends the truth. Suddenly, a high-speed projectile streaks out from the dense treeline, heading directly for Elk's blind spot. Reacting with blistering speed, Finn activates her acceleration skill and dashes right in front of him. She intercepts the deadly ambush with her own body, grunting in heavy pain as the attack connects. Clenching her teeth in sheer frustration, Finn violently curses her failure to sense the stealthy attack coming. Horrified by the sudden bloodshed, Elk desperately shouts out to check if his teammate is okay. Ignoring her bleeding wound, Finn urgently orders Elk to activate his telekinesis and defend their position. Stepping forward as an impenetrable shield, Gumbo immediately activates his steelification skill to block any follow-up shots. Deflecting another high-velocity round, Gumbo taunts the hidden assailants for having the guts to target their leaders straight out of the gate. Analyzing the trajectory, Elk deduces that the enemy must possess a specialized skill to land a shot from such an incredible distance. Staring blankly at Finn's injury, Elk becomes paralyzed by immense guilt, blaming himself entirely for letting his friend get hurt. Meanwhile, an unseen enemy sniper tells their teammate to hold on a little longer while checking the progress of an appraisal skill. A mysterious scout smirks confidently from the shadows, confirming they have a perfectly clear red on Elk's team. Relaying vital intelligence, the scout notes that the huge guy's steelification is only at level 19 and has not yet evolved. Plotting their next move, the enemy leader decides to personally test the strength of the infamous telekinesis while distracting their scouts. Flashing a sinister grin, the shadowy opponent arrogantly declares that ultimate victory already belongs to their team. Skills originally just strengthen the body, but human evolution created thousands of unique variations. To organize this vast system, skills are officially categorized by rank, class, and level. Skill ranks range from G to S, with the 5 stars holding the highest S rank. A glowing diagram visually breaks down the 3 main skill categories. Moving on to the class category, there are exactly 4 primary skill classes. The magic skill class allows users to manifest their internal mana into elemental forces. The weapon skill empowers warriors to magically enhance and wield their weapons in combat. Back in the present, a high-speed projectile violently streaks toward its intended target. The deadly strike is narrowly intercepted before it can connect with anyone. This defense perfectly demonstrates the body-strengthening skill, which enhances physical properties. Deflecting the attack, Gumbo arrogantly boasts that such weak strikes will never work on him. A hidden enemy yells at him not to get cocky as another attack approaches. Rushing forward, Finn confidently declares the attack's simple trajectory makes it easy to counter. She cries in agony as the projectile unexpectedly ricochets right as she activates acceleration. Stumbling backward, a shocked Finn wonders if the hidden sniper is reading her movements. As the dust settles, the narrator reveals the existence of the 4th skill class. Elk steps forward, his hands surging with energy as he prepares to counterattack. This final class is fundamentally different from the other 3 established categories. Unleashing overwhelming telekinetic force, Elk shatters the projectiles and protects his friends. Wielding this unique skill, Elk checks on his grateful teammates. Watching from the shadows, the hidden sniper clicks his tongue in sheer annoyance. The scout notes this dense forest serves as a perfect, annoying natural camouflage. Surveying his surroundings, Elk quickly realizes there is only a single enemy nearby. Elk warns his team the attacker must be close, matching the previous thorn attack. The narrator explains skills can evolve and gain abilities upon reaching their maximum level. The sniper smirks, realizing Elk completely misunderstands the true nature of his projectiles. A massive explosion suddenly erupts from the brush, consuming Elk's tightly grouped team. Peering through the smoke, the sniper doubts the enemy team was actually taken out. He deduces the masked leader purposely let the explosion go off to obscure their presence. Shrugging it off, the sniper calmly waits to reset his skill's cooldown. The sniper realizes the masked leader is sacrificing mobility to manage his team's defenses. He assumes if the masked leader fought alone, he would immediately switch to offense. A brief flashback reveals the sniper plotting this exact strategy with a companion. The shadowy leader instructs the scout how to exploit the masked warrior's weaknesses. The scout smirks, knowing Elk is burdened by his weaker teammates and must cover them. Elsewhere, a different figure silently observes the chaotic battlefield from a high vantage point. A mysterious, stoic girl steps into view, exuding a quiet but dangerous aura. A shadowy voice questions if this boy is the person they were meant to meet. The mysterious girl narrows her eyes, fully prepared to execute her assigned mission. A confident voice confirms her incredible combat skills make her a key strategic player. A shadowy ally skeptically questions the mysterious girl's status as a key player, demanding to know what amazing skill she actually possesses. Unfazed by the heavy doubt, the stoic girl slowly raises a glowing crystalline stone up to her eye. Peering intensely through the magical object, she reveals that her unique skill allows her to perceive every single ability a person possesses just by looking at them. Unimpressed by the crude rock, her arrogant teammate mocks her appraisal skill and argues they should have recruited someone far more battle-inclined. Dismissing her strategic value, he carelessly suggests that a raw body-strengthening user from Class R would have been a much better choice for their team. Cutting off his complaints, the girl effortlessly identifies the hidden sniper Rudra, accurately stating that his needle skill is at level 28 while instantly analyzing its evolution. Rudra gasps in sheer disbelief as the mysterious girl flawlessly exposes his deepest and most guarded combat secrets. Trembling with outrage, he demands to know how she uncovered his hidden skill and aggressively scolds her for shouting out his exact class and level. The team's leader calmly interrupts, explaining that weaponizing this highly classified skill information grants them a massive strategic advantage in the tournament. He elaborates that they can effortlessly avoid troublesome abilities while going all in on opponents they can naturally counter. By bypassing the tedious scouting phase entirely, he arrogantly promises that they will completely control the board and win absolutely every single match. Snapping back to the present battlefield, Rudra smirks as he calculatingly scans the dense forest for his trapped enemy's blind spot. Without warning, a deadly barrage of sharpened needles violently erupts from the dense canopy above. However, the lethal projectiles completely miss their mark, embedding themselves deeply and harmlessly into the surrounding tree trunks. Inspecting the embedded weapons, Rudra mocks his target's desperate attempt to reflect his own needles, taunting them for missing the mark so completely. Assuming his opponents are mentally breaking, Rudra laughs off the wild counterattack as a pathetic display of sheer anxiety and irritation. Suddenly, a blinding flash of movement catches his eye as Finn accelerates rapidly upward through the dense branches. Panicking instantly, Rudra realizes in pure horror that his enemies purposely redirected his needles to create a perfect aerial foothold. Bursting through the foliage with explosive speed, Finn fiercely declares that she finally has the hidden sniper cornered. Using the makeshift metallic platforms, she violently launches herself forward to deliver a devastating airborne strike. Defying gravity, Finn screams with absolute conviction that the three of them are going to win this battle together. A brief flashback reveals Elk regrouping with his battered teammates amidst the chaotic telekinetic storm he created. Breathing heavily, Elk urgently checks on Gumbo's condition while Finn quickly confirms they are both still standing. Grateful for his defensive cover, Finn warns Elk that their time is running out and they cannot stay hidden in this defensive shell forever. Elk confidently reassures her that his telekinetic shield has completely neutralized incoming attacks while he patiently waits for the perfect opening to strike back. Seeing the heavy guilt lingering in Elk's eyes, Finn angrily interrupts his highly protective and defensive monologue. Cutting through his self-doubt, she fiercely yells that his overly protective mindset is completely wrong. Staring him down with fierce loyalty, Finn passionately demands that their leader start relying on his actual teammates. Gesturing to her bleeding injury, she firmly assures Elk that he is absolutely not responsible for her getting hurt. Stepping closer, Finn powerfully reminds him that win or lose, they face every single challenge as an unbreakable three-man squad. She strictly orders him to stop carrying the entire burden by himself because they are going to claim victory together. Gumbo smiles warmly at the intense exchange, backing up Finn's demand by urging their leader to trust in their collective strength more often. Deeply moved by their unwavering support, Elk finally smiles and admits he has an interesting plan that requires both of their unique strengths. Snapping back to the present aerial assault, Finn vows not to waste the brilliant opening that Gumbo and Elk violently carved out for her. Suddenly, the metallic needles she was using as footholds shift violently beneath her boots, throwing her completely off balance. Recovering his composure, Rudra laughs maniacally and maliciously thanks her for carelessly spreading his lethal needles across the entire battlefield. Plummeting toward the ground, Finn defiantly screams that her true mission was simply to expose his physical body and force him directly into Elk's line of sight. Down on the forest floor, Elk locks onto the exposed sniper and raises his glowing hand with absolute precision. A devastating, invisible shockwave of telekinetic force erupts upward, violently blasting the sniper right out of the sky. The scene opens at the bustling emergency medical tent set up for the martial arts tournament. Frantic medics rush in carrying severely injured students, prompting a nurse to note that normal treatment should suffice for their wounds. Suddenly, another desperate cry for help echoes across the tent as more brutally battered participants arrive. A horrified medic examines the new arrivals, noting multiple pierced bodies, severed fingers, and completely mangled limbs. Observing the gruesome carnage, a staff member quickly realizes this was not just a simple combat exchange. The medical team deduces with chilling certainty that the attacker intentionally avoided fatal blows simply to torture the helpless victims. Trembling on the stretcher, one of the heavily traumatized victims desperately tries to speak about his attacker. Ignoring the medic's pleas to rest, the bleeding boy stammers about how a vicious opponent completely tore his comrades apart. Tears streaming down his dirt-stained face, the survivor recalls how the sadistic attacker just stood there laughing. The broken student confesses he begged for mercy and handed over their flag, but his absolute surrender meant nothing. He remembers the horrifying moment the monster coldly declared he only cared about making them suffer. Screaming in sheer agony, the victim relives the exact moment the psychopath brutally amputated his arm and fingers for pure amusement. A medic attempts to remain professional, assuring the team that their advanced healing magic can probably restore the physical damage. The staff reels in sheer disbelief, utterly disgusted that a freshman could commit such senseless cruelty even in a tournament where killing is allowed. They lament that the tournament was meant for practical combat training, not for completely one-sided, sadistic beatdowns. Looking down at the shattered remains of the students, a medic shudders and condemns the attacker as a monster wearing human skin. Meanwhile, deep inside the forest arena, Sarisa calmly asks Prince Elwood if he would like a refreshing beverage. The arrogant prince casually requests some tea, prompting Sarisa to confidently begin her elaborate preparations. Activating her unique magical prowess, Sarisa initiates her signature skill rental ability. Prince Elwood watches with keen interest, admiring the legendary magic possessed by the genius daughter of the Kinesis family. Selecting from an arsenal of borrowed abilities fueled by affection, she confidently decides 3 specific skills will perfectly brew the tea. Utilizing her first borrowed skill, Sarisa gracefully commands a set of teacups to levitate entirely on their own. With a simple snap of her fingers, she instantly teleports fresh water straight into the hovering teapots. Using her second borrowed ability, she conjures a crystal-clear spring to expertly purify the suspended liquid. Finally, she uses a precise fire ability to rapidly heat the water to the absolute perfect brewing temperature. Serving the pristine tea with an elegant bow, she accepts Elwood's amused praise for such a lavish and extravagant display. Blushing slightly at his compliment, Sarisa humbly claims she is deeply honored to be praised for such a simple triple combo. Gazing into the dense forest, she expresses mild concern for her brother Rashuo, who boldly left to secure a flag entirely on his own. Prince Elwood completely dismisses her worry, confident that the targeted team poses absolutely zero threat to Rashuo's overwhelming strength. As Elwood tells her not to worry, a sudden rustling noise from the nearby bushes sharply interrupts their tea time. Emerging from the thick foliage, the imposing silhouette of the sword saint finally returns to the encampment. Feigning a disappointed tone, Rashuo casually apologizes for failing to capture the flag, claiming the enemy team simply ran away too fast. Staring him down intensely, Elwood subtly warns Rashuo that while he is an important teammate, senseless violence is entirely unacceptable. Brushing off the stern accusation, Rashuo waves his hands defensively and fiercely reiterates that his targets simply escaped. Sarisa coldly interrupts his blatant lies, pointing out his glaringly obvious hypocrisy. She deadpans that his weak excuse completely falls apart considering his entire body is absolutely drenched in fresh blood. Looking down at his crimson-stained hands and ruined uniform, Rashuo finally realizes his sloppy mistake. A dark, sadistic smile creeps across his face as he openly acknowledges the undeniable truth of his brutal massacre. Standing amidst the serene forest, the bloody swordsman gleefully relishes the sheer ecstasy of the torture he just inflicted. Fully embracing his monstrous nature, Rashuo's terrifying and blood-soaked presence casts a dark shadow over the tournament grounds. Covered in blood, Rashuo casually asks for tea, but Sarisa coldly refuses to serve him until he changes out of his filthy clothes. Pumped up by their recent victory, Gumbo cheers enthusiastically in the middle of the dense forest. Observing their defeated opponent, Elk uses a binding to secure the unconscious sniper and hopes it will do the trick. Surprised by the enemy's completely knocked-out state, Finn realizes Elk actually held back, though she admits the heavy telekinetic hit justifies the damage. Elk stares silently at his fallen adversary, caught in a moment of quiet reflection. Breaking the silence, Gumbo suddenly asks his teammates if they remember what the head nurse said during the opening ceremony. Confused by the abrupt topic change, Finn confirms he is talking about Nurse Nightingale and wonders where this is going. Gumbo grimly recalls the nurse's guarantee that any injury or death can be healed, confirming that killing is explicitly allowed in this tournament. He proposes a dark strategy, suggesting they eliminate the incapacitated enemy right now to prevent his teammates from rescuing him. Acknowledging it is not the cleanest method, Gumbo argues it is the most tactical move to stop the rest of the enemy team from striking back. Staring resolutely ahead, Elk firmly declares that he absolutely will not kill the defeated opponent. He questions the morality of taking a life for something as trivial as a tournament simply because the rules allow it. Elk's mind flashes to a traumatic memory, reinforcing his vow to never stoop to the level of the cruel people from his past. Gripping his fists tightly, Elk mentally reaffirms that senseless murder is something he simply cannot bring himself to do. Turning back to his friends, Elk passionately states that he refuses to let them become killers either. Finn smirks knowingly, amused by the realization that their powerful leader is a complete softy through and through. Gumbo bursts into laughter, enthusiastically agreeing that this genuine kindness is exactly what makes Elk who he is. Realizing they were never serious about murder, Elk groans in exasperation and points out that he figured they were just testing him. Finn cheers wildly, claiming she merely wanted to reaffirm their team's unbreakable bond while Elk sighs at their chaotic antics. Stealing his resolve, Elk suddenly commands their attention and decides to test them in return. He nervously asks if it would be alright to share something crucial with the two of them. Urging them to listen closely, Elk states they must decide if they still want to fight alongside him after hearing his secret. Taking a deep breath, Elk prepares to confess the grim tragedy he endured back in his homeland. He decides the time has come to reveal his true reason for fighting and the heavy burden of his revenge. His teammates wait in absolute, focused silence, ready to hear their leader's most guarded secrets. The dense forest remains eerily quiet as Elk struggles to find the right words to begin his painful story. Finn tilts her head in confusion, wondering why Elk suddenly stopped talking when he was just about to reveal everything. Elk's eyes widen in sheer panic as he notices falling leaves drifting downward despite there being absolutely no wind. Recognizing the imminent danger, Elk desperately screams for his friends to get away immediately. A massive, blinding explosion abruptly erupts in the middle of the quiet forest. The devastating blast violently engulfs the entire area in a raging inferno of destruction. Thick black smoke billows into the sky as the violent shockwave shatters the surrounding trees. Tumbling safely away from the blast zone, Elk realizes the fallen leaves themselves actually exploded and frantically worries if his friends survived. Peering through the dense smoke, Elk breathes a sigh of relief as he spots Finn and Gumbo successfully using their skills to block the explosion. A sinister new enemy materializes from the thick smoke, stepping confidently onto the scorched battlefield. The menacing figure smirks darkly, raising a hand as he prepares to unleash further devastation. The narrator explains this attacker possesses a frighteningly simple and straightforward ability known as the explosion skill. A close-up reveals the enemy's dangerous hand crackling with volatile energy. With this lethal power, absolutely anything the user touches with their bare hand instantly turns into a deadly bomb. The explosive enemy sneers arrogantly, boasting that his unique skills completely blew their leader to bits. Horrified by the massive blast, Finn and Gumbo scream Elk's name in pure desperation. Thick smoke billows from the devastating explosion as the fate of their masked leader remains entirely unknown. The explosive user asks his hidden teammate if she finally finished analyzing the black masked leader after the sudden bombing 15 minutes ago. The mysterious girl replies that she just needs a little more time to meet the specific conditions of her ability. She explains that her unique skill allows her to completely grasp a target's exact level, abilities, and evolutionary path. Suddenly, her eyes widen in absolute shock as she peers deep into the abyss of Elk's hidden power. A terrifying realization washes over her as she begins to comprehend the sheer magnitude of what she is witnessing. Her mind is violently pulled into a dark, endless expanse that she frantically tries to identify as an enemy skill. Trapped in the dark abyss, she questions what this terrifying phenomenon could possibly be since none of her targets should possess such power. She floats helplessly in a boundless black ocean that completely defies all logical comprehension. Suddenly, the endless void begins to shift and morph into a chaotic storm of swirling elements. Staring in sheer awe, she slowly realizes the true nature of the terrifying black sea surrounding her. She deduces that the dark water is actually a colossal, incomprehensible mass of raw numerical data. Crushed by the sheer weight of the data, she admits she simply cannot process the overwhelming volume of information regarding his skill. As her mind reaches its absolute breaking point, the bursting data forcefully projects a terrifying vision directly into her brain. A chilling, omnipotent image of Elk's glowing eye pierces through the dark void and stares directly into her soul. Completely overwhelmed by the divine pressure, she screams in agony as her consciousness violently shatters. Back in the real world, her explosive teammate gasps in shock as she suddenly collapses to the ground. He shakes her violently, frantically demanding that she snap out of her sudden stupor. Realizing she is completely unresponsive, he confirms with dread that his intelligence gatherer is totally unconscious. Panicking over his failed strategy, he aggressively debates whether to retreat before forcing himself to think of a new plan. Suddenly, the unconscious girl mutters that the masked leader's true skill is telekinesis. Barely breathing, she weakly reports that his actual power level is completely unable to be evaluated. She explains the power was too immense to see fully before desperately screaming at her teammate to shut up and listen. With absolute grim certainty, she warns him that they have absolutely zero chance of winning as long as Elk remains on the board. She explains that if they can somehow defeat him, the remaining unbalanced pieces of his team will easily fall apart. Shedding a tear, she apologizes for being unable to fight alongside her team until the very end. Fired up by her tragic sacrifice, the explosive user vows that he will absolutely not let his fallen comrades' efforts be in vain. Lunging forward with explosive speed, he boldly declares that he will be taking their flag right now. Refusing to back down, Finn swiftly drops into a combat stance to defend their objective against the incoming assault. The confident bomber smirks dangerously, mockingly asking for permission as he initiates his devastating attack. Gumbo shouts in pure shock as massive explosions suddenly erupt from the underground tree roots. The ground violently shatters as the buried roots act as a chain of hidden detonators. Gumbo excitedly tells Finn that he completely figured out the enemy's skill, deducing that he blows up absolutely anything he touches. The bomber laughs mockingly, asking the heroes if they foolishly believed the underground explosions were meant to be a direct attack. The shattered earth suddenly gives way, revealing a massive, gaping sinkhole right beneath their feet. The enemy leader triumphantly confirms that he deliberately blew up the roots solely to create a massive hole. Smirking down into the abyss, he declares that this entire maneuver was executed perfectly to save his trapped comrade. The dust clears to reveal the hidden sniper plummeting safely into the newly formed subterranean escape route. The battlefield falls entirely silent as the dense dust from the massive explosion begins to settle. The explosive user arrogantly declares that no matter how many clever strategies his enemies devise, resistance is completely useless. He smugly asserts that a team lacking their telekinetic leader only has one pathetic option remaining. Glaring confidently at the surviving members, he bluntly states that their only choice is to flee. Suddenly, a terrifying and unseen presence silently manifests directly behind the arrogant bomber. Startled by a sudden, overwhelming pressure, he frantically questions what this horrifying vision could possibly be. Gripped by sudden panic, he realizes his primal instincts are aggressively warning him of a massive, unseen threat. Trembling in sheer denial, he desperately tries to reject the chilling sensation violently washing over his entire body. The crushing weight of the enemy's aura finally crystallizes into the unmistakable and devastating feeling of total defeat. Staring in absolute disbelief, he finally begins to piece together the grim reality of his catastrophic failure. He realizes with pure dread that the devastating explosion he triggered merely destroyed the empty hood Elk was wearing. He quickly deduces that Elk effortlessly dodged the blast and patiently waited behind them for this exact, fatal opening. Acknowledging their flawless teamwork, he realizes Finn and Gumbo did not run away but tactically retreated just out of his attack range. Utterly defeated by their absolute perfection, the bomber solemnly apologizes to his unconscious team for their total loss. The tense scene abruptly shifts to the bustling emergency medical tent set up for the martial arts tournament. Exhausted and battered participants rest heavily in the clinical environment after their brutal tournament matches. The defeated bomber sits quietly on a medical cot, slowly processing the bitter reality of his complete failure. A teammate reassures him not to worry about their unconscious scout, urging him to fully trust the 5-star doctor's legendary healing abilities. Clicking his tongue in deep frustration, the bomber bluntly admits to his rival that they entirely lost the match. Standing calmly nearby, Elk simply nods and agrees with the bomber's blunt assessment of the battle. Seeking a final sense of closure, the defeated student asks the masked victor for permission to ask one last question. He asks Elk why he didn't strike to kill before taking the flag, noting there was always a dangerous chance he could have turned it into a bomb. Elk casually explains that while he would have in a real deathmatch, this is ultimately just a martial arts tournament. Adding to his reasoning, Elk notes that he could easily tell from the bomber's defeated expression that he already knew the match was over. Deeply impressed by Elk's thorough and decisive nature, the bomber openly acknowledges his opponent's superior tactical mindset. Staring ahead with a mix of newfound respect and heavy resignation, he honestly admits that he was completely and utterly beaten. The scene opens on the grand stage of the martial arts tournament's main arena. The massive crowd buzzes with anticipation as they wait for the returning champions. The roaring announcer excitedly declares that the return magic has activated for the first qualifying team. Emerging from the magical light, the team led by top student Elwood makes their grand appearance. He is proudly flanked by the formidable Swordmaster and the brilliant Magic Saint. The crowd erupts into deafening cheers, celebrating the elite trio's incredibly triumphant return. Rashuo arrogantly notes that despite messing around, they still finished first, and casually wonders what opponents await them next. Sarisa dismisses the competition entirely, while Rashuo admits he never got his hopes up for a mere school event alongside Elwood. The three powerhouse students stand tall, exuding an aura of absolute dominance over the tournament. Awed spectators whisper excitedly about Lord Rashuo's team being the absolute quickest to qualify. One spectator loudly praises Rashuo, calling his performance perfectly expected for the esteemed heir to the House of Kinesis. A dark, imposing voice from the VIP balcony suddenly growls that the spectator is entirely wrong. Staring down with intense disdain, the speaker bitterly corrects that Rashuo is merely the second son. Duke Kinesis watches the arena with cold fury, silently cursing his own son's name. He seethes with anger, disgusted that Rashuo is getting giddy simply acting as an accessory to royalty. A servant timidly asks about the eldest son as the Duke demands absolute, overwhelming talent rather than a child content in a mere academy. Without a shred of emotion, the ruthless Duke coldly declares that his eldest son died long ago. Miles away in the dense forest arena, Elk formally reveals to his teammates that he is actually the eldest son of the Kinesis ducal house. Finn and Gumbo stare blankly at their leader, completely stunned by the massive revelation. Snapping out of their shock, the duo frantically demands an explanation, screaming that their brains cannot keep up with this sudden twist. Elk calmly explains that his family covered up his existence after his younger brother Rashuo tried to kill him, leaving his siblings to assume he was dead. Lowering his head, Elk sincerely apologizes for springing this heavy burden on them but insists he no longer wanted to keep secrets. Gumbo and Finn sweat nervously, fully grasping the sheer scale of this major scandal involving a massive ducal house from the Dao Kingdom. Gumbo seriously asks Elk why he took such a huge risk by enrolling in this specific academy with a dark backstory like that. Elk takes a deep breath, preparing to finally voice the dark motivation driving him forward. His eyes darken with intense resolve as he confesses that his sole reason for enrolling is to get absolute revenge against the Kinesis family. Elk admits that at first he just wanted a little payback, but unexpectedly finding his cruel siblings here changed everything. He confesses that seeing them brought all his suppressed hatred flooding back, which is exactly why he selfishly used Finn and Gumbo to enter the tournament. Clenching his fists, Elk fiercely declares he wants to multiply the pain and humiliation he suffered and return it to his family in front of a huge crowd. A heavy silence falls over the team as Elk waits for their judgment, prompting Finn to step forward. Pointing aggressively at her leader, Finn loudly summarizes the situation in her own unique way. She closes the distance between them, completely ignoring the dark and brooding atmosphere Elk just created. Finn bluntly states that ignoring the complicated politics, Elk is just pissed at his annoying siblings and wants to land a solid punch to shut them up. Gumbo flashes a massive grin, warmly adding that what their leader really wants is just a simple sibling fight. The giant reminds Elk that they are fighting to win the championship anyway, meaning a clash with his siblings' top-tier team was absolutely inevitable. Finn pumps her fists enthusiastically, vowing not to get in Elk's way as they go kick his family's asses and win the whole tournament. Smiling gently, Finn reassures a stunned Elk that despite the shocking backstory, they never once felt used by him. Elk looks at his two incredible friends, deeply moved by their unwavering and unconditional loyalty. Breaking his stoic facade, Elk smiles softly and calls out their names with immense gratitude. With absolute sincerity, the masked leader thanks his precious friends from the bottom of his heart for choosing to be on his team. The piercing sound of a horn echoes suddenly across the dense forest canopy. Startled by the sudden noise, Elk pauses to wonder if the loud blast is a trumpet or some kind of signal. While Elk questions if the sound marks the end of the battle, Finn urgently warns him to stay on his guard and prepare for an ambush. A heavy, tense silence falls over the clearing as the team remains on high alert. Suddenly, Gumbo glances downward as a massive tremor violently shakes the earth beneath his feet. Without warning, the solid ground erupts and entirely swallows the hulking warrior in a massive cloud of dust. Horrified by the sudden disappearance of his teammate, Elk screams Gumbo's name into the swirling dirt. As the dust settles, a menacing new enemy rises from the shattered earth to confront the survivors. Glaring fiercely at the intruder, Elk demands to know if the stranger was the one responsible for the sudden ambush. Elk clenches his fists and aggressively questions if this earth-wielding enemy was the one who just took down Gumbo. The stoic enemy calmly stares back and arrogantly asks what Elk plans to do if he is indeed the culprit. Gathering his telekinetic power, Elk braces himself for an immediate, high-stakes confrontation. Acknowledging Elk's formidable strength from the previous battle, the enemy listens as Elk fiercely demands their flag so he can rush his friend to the infirmary. Instead of surrendering, the silent adversary shifts his stance and prepares to unleash a devastating counterattack. The enemy's body suddenly crumbles into dirt, revealing it as earthen armor and forcing Elk to realize the true user is hiding elsewhere. A disembodied voice echoes through the forest, boasting that his unique skill evolution has granted him unprecedented power. The hidden attacker proudly declares that the very earth itself has now become his absolute domain. Shifting his focus entirely, the unseen enemy states that Gumbo's flag is now his for the taking. A massive hand constructed entirely of solid rock bursts from the ground and reaches directly for the fallen teammate's flag. Refusing to lose another comrade, Elk furiously yells that he will not let the enemy steal their objective. Surging with telekinetic energy, Elk violently thrusts his hand forward to intercept the earthen construct. Suddenly, Finn cries out in utter shock as a bizarre new force violently assaults her from all sides. Frantically swatting at her body, she screams in pain and confusion as a dark swarm completely envelopes her. Hearing the sickening rustle of countless tiny legs, Finn realizes in pure horror that the swarm is entirely composed of aggressive bugs. Disgusted and terrified, Finn violently thrashes around and desperately screams for the creeping vermin to get off her. Noticing that Gumbo's body has completely vanished during the chaos, Finn frantically yells at Elk that they must go save him quickly. Before Elk can react to her panic, a strange, rhythmic melody suddenly catches his attention. Eerie musical notes drift through the air, perfectly synchronizing with the violent buzzing of the insect swarm. Standing calmly on a high branch, a new enemy plays a bizarre instrument to command the terrifying swarm. Guided by the sinister melody, the massive cloud of vermin aggressively converges on the remaining heroes. The sky grows completely dark as thousands of insects form an inescapable, nightmarish vortex. A sinister teammate cackles wildly, boasting that when Maestro Chutta conducts this many vermin, they become a truly magnificent army. Using the manipulation skill to perfectly control living creatures via sound, the arrogant enemy offers his mocking condolences to the overwhelmed heroes. In the aftermath of the chaotic ambush, a commanding voice calmly asks Rox if he successfully managed to retrieve the enemy's flag. Kneeling respectfully, Rox confirms his success and proudly presents the stolen objective. Handing the hard-earned flag over, Rox formally addresses the imposing leader of their squad as Lord Marcos. A massive, terrifying swarm of giant insects aggressively descends upon the chaotic battlefield. The sinister conductor cackles maliciously, boasting that his ravenous insect army can shred a massive tree in an instant and won't leave a single human bone behind. Suddenly, his arrogant laughter is cut entirely short as a massive, unexpected telekinetic force violently disrupts the dense swarm. Staring in sheer disbelief, the insect master desperately questions what kind of invisible barrier just repelled his magnificent army. Revealing his flawless defense, Elk stands completely unfazed while using his telekinesis to rip massive tree roots from the earth as a protective dome. The impenetrable wooden barrier seamlessly deflects the relentless onslaught of razor-sharp insects buzzing around them. The enemy conductor panics, furiously demanding to know how Elk and Finn survived entirely unscathed by simply hiding beneath the floating roots. Quickly analyzing the situation, the bug master realizes the dense earthen roots effectively masked their carbon dioxide, completely blinding his swarm's tracking senses. Refusing to accept defeat, the enraged enemy shouts that insects are absolutely not his only method of attack. With a swift and deadly command, he redirects a massive, vicious bird to violently dive-bomb Elk's position from the sky. Without breaking a sweat, Elk instantly traps the massive avian beast in midair using his overwhelming telekinetic grip. Elk coldly taunts the conductor, mocking his predictable attempt to use an airborne creature as a surprise projectile. With a ruthless flick of his wrist, Elk violently slams the colossal bird straight into the ground. Staring down his panicked foe, Elk boldly declares that the insect master is completely helpless once the secret behind his tracking method is exposed. The enemy furiously screams at Elk, aggressively demanding to know how he can act so calm when his hulking ally was just taken down. Unfazed by the taunt, Elk smirks confidently and states there is absolutely no need to worry about such pathetic attacks. With unwavering faith in his comrade, Elk proudly vows that Gumbo will never be defeated by something so incredibly weak. Suddenly, the earth violently shatters as Gumbo explosively bursts forth from his underground prison. The enemy team recoils in pure shock, screaming in absolute horror that the giant warrior is somehow still alive. Covered in soil but practically unharmed, Gumbo cracks his neck and fiercely prepares to rejoin the brutal fray. Brushing off the dirt, Gumbo furiously scolds his attackers for cowardly hitting him in the face with a bird. He angrily admits that if he hadn't instantly steelified his face, the devastating impact would have done far more than just simply knock him out. Frustrated by the failure, the aristocratic Lord Marcos aggressively orders his earthen subordinate to properly finish the match. Marcos entirely loses his temper, viciously insulting Gumbo as a lowly peasant who is getting far too carried away. Stepping in front of his master, the stoic earthen warrior calmly asks Lord Marcos to stand back while he handles the towering threat. Gumbo grins fiercely, violently taunting the earthen warrior as a pathetic clay doll who will serve as his very first opponent. Disgusted by their dynamic, Gumbo openly questions how any self-respecting warrior could blindly serve a master with absolutely zero dignity. Unbothered by the heavy insult, the clay warrior loyally states he owes everything to his master while coldly sizing Gumbo up. With absolute, chilling confidence, the earthen fighter vows that crushing a brute like Gumbo won't be difficult at all. Welcoming the challenge, Gumbo activates his steelification and fiercely challenges the clay warrior to back up those arrogant words. Lunging forward with explosive momentum, Gumbo violently roars that his steel skill will completely tear the damn soil right off his opponent's body. Gumbo delivers a devastating, steel-hardened punch directly into the earthen warrior's solid torso. Instead of shattering his enemy, Gumbo's fist sinks uselessly into the malleable, shifting clay of his opponent's armored body. Wide-eyed with absolute shock, Gumbo frantically realizes his most powerful strike completely failed to deal any actual damage. The clay warrior mockingly lectures Gumbo, explaining that the giant brute completely misunderstands the true nature of soil as a versatile component of earth. He proudly explains that his earthen body perfectly balances a softness capable of swallowing anything with a hardness designed to support all things. Harnessing both ultimate defense and fluid adaptability, the clay warrior prepares to severely punish Gumbo's reckless assault. Trapped by the shifting earth, Gumbo desperately attempts to raise his guard as the enemy mounts a lethal counterattack. Staring down his trapped prey, the clay warrior coldly declares that there is absolutely no way a blunt brawler like Gumbo can win. A sudden, explosive impact violently rocks the battlefield, leaving Gumbo completely caught off guard by the devastating follow-up strike. The chaotic battlefield erupts as the two powerful combatants violently clash in a flurry of heavy strikes. Exploiting an opening, the clay warrior delivers a devastating, earth-shattering blow directly into his opponent. Gumbo takes the brutal hit head-on, struggling to maintain his footing under the immense pressure. Towering over his struggling foe, the earthen fighter laughs maniacally and maliciously rubs the victory in Gumbo's face. The clay warrior smugly asks if Gumbo finally understands the massive difference in their skill levels and the absolute certainty of his defeat. Breathing heavily, Gumbo grunts through the pain and aggressively tells his opponent to save the boasting for later. Covered in bruises, Gumbo fiercely declares that the clay warrior should only talk down to him when he has actually been properly defeated. Unfazed by the defiance, the earthen fighter narrows his eyes and prepares to launch another ruthless assault. Moving with lethal intent, the clay warrior unleashes a brutal barrage of rock-hard fists against his stubborn opponent. Enduring the relentless beating, Gumbo curses the frustrating reality that his hardened steel skill is completely ineffective against the shifting soil. As his consciousness begins to fade and the physical pain dulls, Gumbo mentally tallies their traded blows while clinging to a vital memory. He recalls a profound lesson that no matter what skill a person possesses, it can always be strengthened through relentless application and hard work. The memory vividly reveals Elk, reminding him that ultimate victory is never guaranteed merely by the innate skill one is born with. Inspired by his leader's wisdom, Gumbo hears Elk's voice echoing in his mind, assuring him that he can become even stronger. Suddenly, a massive and blinding explosion erupts violently across the battlefield, catching everyone completely off guard. Staring in pure shock, the clay warrior stammers in absolute disbelief as his seemingly impenetrable earthen armor is completely blown away. Thick smoke billows from the shattered remnants of the armor as the sheer destructive force of the blast settles. Standing tall amidst the smoke, a fiercely determined Gumbo vows that he absolutely cannot lose to a pathetic clay doll. Gumbo pushes himself beyond his limits, acknowledging that the powerful leader he strives to follow is still incredibly far ahead of him. Observing his ruined defenses, the earthen fighter realizes with shock that Gumbo's skill miraculously evolved at the very last second. The clay warrior notes they both share the ability to alter their forms, but frantically questions the origin of Gumbo's terrifying destructive power. Gumbo reveals that because his steel skin produces iron powder metabolites, packing them tightly during a punch creates a massive explosive reaction. Smiling grimly, Gumbo admits the severe drawback is that his own arm cannot easily handle the intense explosive force. Showcasing his battered limb, Gumbo notes he already sacrificed his right arm just to land that initial devastating hit. The clay warrior smirks, identifying the attack as a makeshift dust explosion while tauntingly questioning if Gumbo can possibly pull it off again. Clicking his tongue in deep frustration, Gumbo realizes his opponent has completely figured out his explosive new secret. Wasting absolutely no time, Gumbo fiercely lunges forward to deliver another brutal, high-stakes strike. The clay warrior quickly braces himself and violently intercepts Gumbo's desperate, incoming assault. The earthen fighter confidently takes the heavy hit head-on, completely absorbing the kinetic impact with his shifting body. Smirking through the intense clash, the clay warrior cruelly reminds Gumbo of his earlier, arrogant warning. Staring down the battered giant, the earthen fighter repeats that there is absolutely no way Gumbo will ever win. Refusing to surrender, Gumbo shifts his stance and unexpectedly prepares a secondary, hidden attack. Flashing a defiant grin, Gumbo boldly contradicts his opponent and declares that he has already secured the Victoria. The clay warrior gasps in sheer terror as he realizes Gumbo packed the highly explosive iron powder onto his legs as well. Delivering a devastatingly powerful kick, Gumbo detonates the packed iron powder in a massive, point-blank explosion. The earthen warrior screams in agony as the overwhelming explosive blast violently launches him high into the air. The clay fighter crashes heavily into the dirt, completely defeated by Gumbo's brilliant and explosive new technique.